Not everyone can handle Gordon Ramsay's sharp tongue, and these contestants proved it. Funny side to her as well.
Great emotions, and there's even tears, crocodile tears, even from a judge like yours truly.
While most of her time on the show was remarkable, the finale kicked off at a whole new level. Claudia made some tamales with Mexican truffles, and believe me, they were totally out of this world. Claudia was certain that she'd knocked it out of the park. She was so moved by the flavor that she couldn't even get a grip of her emotions. And hey, she had a good reason to react like that. Because here's a quick look at Chef Ramsay's reaction to her dish.
Tasting your own food and then crying. Wow, that's a first.
The huit la coche tamale with cactus salsa, avocado crema, and chicharron was a sight to behold.
A cactus salsa finished off with an avocado and a crispy pork chicharron.
It was exactly what the judges expected, simple yet elevated. All three judges couldn't stop raving about the dish. While Ramsay was all about its appearance, Graham loved the balance and flavor, and Christina, well, she was completely sold on the dish. Anyway, with that, Claudia then moved on to the entrees, and this time, she served a swordfish with Mexican squash and chickpeas.
Grilled swordfish served over sauteed chayote and fresh chickpeas and Mexican squash on top.
Now, the competition was getting tough, as Derek had plated a wonderful dish of his own. But Claudia's was no less good.
Root vegetables, a huckleberry sauce, and a puff pastry cage.
Going by the looks of it, Chef Ramsay started to worry if the dish was dry, but, well, here's a look at how things went.
That vibrant, I want more of it. This is your most accomplished dish that you've ever cooked in this competition.
However, the dessert round took a dramatic turn for Claudia.
Water splashed inside when I moved the tray. This is like worst case.
Yeah, sadly, due to a little slip up, she had to start working on her flain molds all over again. Meanwhile, over on the other side, Derek was dealing with his own mess. When it was time for judgment, Claudia presented a hibiscus poached pear dish.
And it is 100% all about the pear. They're tender.
And, well, I think you have a fair idea of how the season ended.
Claudia!
See, Claudia's culinary journey had its ups and downs, but in the end, she delivered on all fronts. Today, Claudia is running her own catering and consulting company, all the while looking after her precious daughter like a queen. But here comes another contestant who has received mixed opinions from the judges and viewers alike. I'm talking about Subha. More specifically, when a chicken and sausage jambalaya was presented to the judges. Now, this dude was pretty confident in himself.
Gorgeous. Are you nervous at all?
I'm making Cajun dish and I'm an Indian. That's what I'm nervous about.
But let's see what the judges have to say.
Oh boy. Wow.
Well, I guess wow is the word of the day. But the story isn't over yet. Chef Ramsay had a surprise up his sleeve that was both jaw-dropping and heartwarming.
Would you mind? I'll help you in.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Chef Ramsay brought in Subha's own mom to dish out the final judgments. And I'm sure Subha never expected that to happen.
Sir, with the jambalaya. You okay?
Oh, this is so special.
Now, he might have run into some troubles much later on the show, but hey, during the auditions, the dude totally earned that apron. Now, let's move on to the ultimate street food showdown. Well, come feast your eyes on this mouth-watering masterpiece, a fried chicken burger with duck fat potatoes.
What did you cook?
A fried chicken burger with some mayo, a coleslaw, and a light pickle.
When it was time for the tasting, the judges' reaction was totally unexpected.
Oh, good. Tasty, crunchy. It's got the textures to it.
So, what about the other judges? Well, sounds like everyone was taken with the dish.
Is it tasty? Yeah, absolutely. Is the chicken crunchy? Yes, absolutely.
Well, you have to agree, that did look delicious. But you know what? This reminds me of Sashi Chelia, the culinary wizard who owned MasterChef Australia 2018 with his amazing dishes. When it comes to him, you already know we're in for a treat. I mean, do you remember the time when he presented this?
The biggest concern is making sure the chicken is cooked.
Wow, talk about the perfect dish. But here's the kicker, would he be able to pull it off in time? The time was ticking, and it was only a matter of time until he could get that chicken on the table.
I just hope that this chicken works out. I don't have the time to check whether my chicken is cooked.
And what do you know? He totally nailed it. And here's a look at how the judges reacted.
Here we go. 10 seconds. 9.
Van, you blame them? This dish was cooked perfectly, and the compliments kept rolling in favor of the dish.
It's just absolutely perfect. The balance is spot on.
What's more, people flooded the comments section with praise and complimenting his quick thinking. Just like this viewer here who said Sashi managed to efficiently improvise, adapt, and overcome to beat the odds. I like how Sashi thought of a solution when the breast was undercooked. He pulled off the mindset of improvise, overcome, and adapt. Sashi had truly poured his heart and soul into that dish, and the result was pure magic. But now, we've got Elizabeth in the kitchen, and let me tell you, the judges' reactions to what she was making were on a completely different level. And look no further than her breakfast lasagna served alongside an artichoke heart salad. While the judges weren't too sure about it, at least on paper, here's how it turned out.
Dano, chanterelles, and prosciutto, and a salad of baby artichoke hearts with capers.
I mean, Joe was taking his sweet time to slice into the dish because he probably didn't want to destroy it. That's how immaculate it was.
And what's inside of it?
Layers of bechamel with
Bechamel.
prosciutto. Then I mixed in the chanterelles and the prosciutto.
And when it was time to dish out the comments, the judges couldn't hold themselves back.
Wow. That's great. This is amazing.
And, well, they simply couldn't stop singing its praises.
It's like taking a trip to Italy. Great job. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's just one of those times when the dish completely stole the show single-handedly. Speaking of, remember Fred? The magician? Well, he wasn't exactly a magician, but boy did he bring magic to his plate. I mean, just look at how gorgeous his creation here is. It was literally like a piece of art. What do you think?
A black vinegar and Ovaltine-infused chocolate cake with malted mascarpone.
And I'm sure it took a ton of ingredients and a tremendous amount of effort to pull off a chocolate masterpiece on that scale. Now, fast forward to the taste test, and let's see what the judges had to say about it.
This is delicious. Serious.
Thank you.
This is all the superlatives you give dessert.
Well, what do you know? The judges loved every last bite of it. This dish was pure artistry, and it's no surprise they were head over heels for it.
No, but it's also so smart because it's all those things, but it's not.
And nope, they didn't stop at just a few compliments. Oh no. They kept them coming one after the other. But just when you thought they were done, you want what Chef Ramsay did.
He struggled with making decisions, and I think that says it all right there.
Yeah, he straight up licked the plate clean. Now, the closest Chef Ramsay has come to doing that is when Dustin presented the judges with a classic sausage roll.
Listen to that noise.
Would this be like a main course or a hot dog?
Oh man, did you hear that? Just the sound of that crispy puff pastry was enough to get the judges excited. At first, there was a complete silence, but right after they took a dive for a second mouthful.
Put some for the rest of us. Oh.
Well, it looks like Chef Ramsay was once again on a mission to finish the plate all by himself. Well, I guess his actions speak louder than words. Chef Ramsay literally left nothing for the other judges to taste.
Delicious.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I mean, no doubt, he totally earned the win. But is a video of impressive dishes ever complete without bringing up Reynold Pornomo?
On you, my friend. Bring it up.
Oh yeah, that dude totally stole the show. This guy's a real genius. I mean, he always had a mind-blowing dish up his sleeve. But there is one masterpiece that stood out from the rest. When Reynolds stepped up and started explaining his dish to the judges, let me tell you, the list of ingredients sounded absolutely heavenly. Jasmine gelato, coconut, and frozen ganache. Wow, could it get any better? Reynolds' ability to consistently elevate his dishes to new heights was a hallmark of his time on season 12. It's those moments of genius popping up where you least expect them. That's why I keep coming back to the show for sure. Well, although Reynolds didn't win the competition, he did manage to win a few hearts. I love how people know Reynolds more than the actual winners. He's just the GOAT. People gushed about how he is still remembered more than the actual winners, and well, desserts or not, he's surely the GOAT. And well, there's more than one viewer to back this comment. The best dessert chef in entire MasterChef history. Period. Yep, he's considered to be the best dessert chef in the entire history of the show. And trust me when I say this. He earned the title. But now, let's think outside of desserts and dive straight into the pan-sear Arctic char. Mary Berg totally aced this challenge, and let me tell you this. When it comes to cooking, there's no stopping her. I mean, just listen to her describing the dish, and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Pan-seared Arctic char with a blueberry red wine reduction and a carrot puree.
Well, well, well. Looks like the chef's a bit unsure about the combo, huh? But how did Mary handle it? Well, you'll be surprised.
I'm nervous, but I think it'll be good.
Mary totally made it work. This dish was like a foodie dream come true.
This is a pan-seared Arctic char with a blueberry wine reduction and...
But here comes the million-dollar question. Would it taste as good as it looked? Well, let's see what the judges have to say about it.
It's fantastic.
The compliments were pouring in, and well, she earned every bit of that applause in my book.
You intensified those aromatic notes of the cassis.
Now, I have talked about Christine and her perfectly crafted apple pie to death in my previous videos. But what happened in the second mystery box challenge was way more intriguing. So this time, guess what lay inside those boxes?
Veal brains, lamb heart, bull's testicles, pig's kidney, cow's tongue, and a delicious lamb's head.
While Christine felt glad she was spared the ghastly sight, she eventually made panko fried sweetbreads served with bok choy.
A great accomplishment.
Thank you so much, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And yeah, it was a hit. However, Ryan turned out to be the winner this time. This meant Christine had to compete in the subsequent elimination challenge. And Ryan smartly strategized to exploit all her weaknesses. He was in charge of choosing who could cook with a live crab and who would cook with canned meat. And Ryan spared no expense in trying to eliminate his strongest competitor.
She might be a little bit thrown by working with the fresh crab, and I think it might be a little bit of a tougher ingredient for her. So I'm going to give her fresh crab in this.
Fresh crab. You're clever, Ryan. No more Mr. Nice Guy.
Now, this was a cunning move, and I'm not the only one who thought so.
In the MasterChef kitchen that's hoping for the canned crab.
Monty stole my words when she said,
gives a live crab to the blind chick.
But in Christine's reaction video to that episode, she revealed she was actually cool with it and held no grudge against Ryan. Instead of getting all worked up, she actually appreciated it. Why? Because it showed that Ryan saw her as a real contender, someone to take seriously in the competition. And just like Ryan expected, Christine had some trouble with that crab, and at one point it got her. Ouch. She even needed medical help in the aftermath.
It pierced me. Medic. It's not too deep.
Now, would you look at that evil grin on Ryan's face? However, the judges, understandably, were a tad worried. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? But guess what? When judgment came, Christine did what she did best.
Every freaking time, like an angel. Good job.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Yep, she knocked it out of the park.
Are you really blind?
Yes, Chef, I am.
What color eyes have I got?
I have no idea, Chef. I've been asking people here actually to describe all of you to me so I could figure out what you all look like.
Chef Ramsay was straight up floored. I mean, he was in complete disbelief. It was a total game changer. Ryan, who probably thought he'd throw Christine off her game, ended up making Christine nigh unstoppable. Oh yeah, Christine's dish was so phenomenal that his strategy completely backfired. And then, in the breakfast challenge, we got a taste of her vocal leadership, and needless to say, the judges were impressed yet again.
So vocal is extraordinary. She's taking control. More importantly, now there's great communication going on.
You guys need to worry about that.
Well, she surely led her team to victory.
And like I've climbed that entire ladder from bottom to top.
Red team, congratulations.
But hey, it's not always the best dishes that leave the judges speechless. Because when communication falls apart, teamwork crumbles, and above all, you got a seriously bad leader on top. Well, that's exactly what went down in Season 6, Episode 4, when the contestants dove into their first team challenge. Anyway, they were going to be dishing out hamburgers with onion rings and coleslaw alongside fish and chips to the hungry crowds at Knott's Berry Farm. But here's the twist, there was no set number of diners. Anyone walking through that gate had to be fed by both teams, who also had the privilege of voting for the winning dish. Dara took the reins of the blue team, but right from the start, they struggled to find their groove in the kitchen. What's shocking is that with just 10 minutes left on the clock, not a single portion of fish was cooked.
Claudia, how many burgers have you got made?
45.
45. Who's on the fish?
I am.
How many portions you got cooked, Katrina?
None.
None. Hey, blue team!
Yes.
There's no fish cooked!
Chef Ramsay's jaw literally hit the floor. He rallied the blue team, demanding they get their act together. He was so furious that he told Dara straight up to skip the challenge and head straight for the pressure test if that was more her thing. But then, Claudia swooped in like a savior to tackle the fish station. Yet, things quickly went south when the blue team was about to serve raw fish to a child.
Can I have some fish?
Stop. 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 The fish is raw.
Draw.
Yeah, talk about a close call. I guess not even Claudia was able to save the service. And obviously Chef Ramsay's patience was pushed to the limits after staring down this train wreck of a service all day.
Hey, blue team, I promise you now, I'll close this down. One more raw fish.
But do you know what's worse? Naming a dish after yourself. Let me introduce you to Brian O'Brien. So nice they named him twice. But maybe shouldn't have named his dish thrice. Or, something. Anyway, Ramsay and Tony couldn't help but exchange glances when the so-called Filet O'Brien was put in front of them.
This is the Filet O'Brien.
But in spite of that, Brian looked pretty proud of his eponymous filet. But let me tell you, that pride was definitely misplaced. Because instead of being impressed, Tony couldn't resist taking a jab at Brian over it.
So you've catapulted yourself with the great cooks of the world.
Absolutely.
The sarcasm was real. Chef Ramsay, meanwhile, found the whole situation absolutely hilarious.
Stop. Filet O'Brien.
My name is Brian O'Brien.
You named it after yourself.
I named it after...
Anyway, when a scene straight out of Hell's Kitchen makes its way into MasterChef, it's only a matter of time before things get intense. And that's exactly what happened in this Season 8 episode, considering they had to feed a group of people about the size of a small country. And it wasn't too long when Chef Ramsay spotted a bowl filled with only center slices, and he couldn't figure what happened to the rest. And eventually, Jason sent him over the edge.
We just want you to have a nicer presentation, so we choose the uniform cuts that are in the middle.
Chef Ramsay couldn't believe it. The dude had butchered the most expensive meat in the country beyond recognition for that. Yeah, Chef Ramsay got real pissed real quick.
But you can't just trash that. It's not a chuck steak.
I understand.
So the contestants scrambled to fix the error before it was too late. To make things worse, the ends of the chunk of meat were still underdone, so you can imagine how raw the center portion was.
It's the first slice and it's raw. What do you do?
Send it back.
That's it.
I am completely embarrassed.
Well, that surely gotta hurt his image for the next few years to come. But hey, at least he didn't serve the judges their own heads on a platter. Yeah, I'm talking about the time when Audrey stepped up with a pretty nice or nasty surprise in store of the judges. Cakes. But they weren't just any old cakes.
Next hopeful figured out how to get her cakes ahead in the competition.
However, fortunately for Audrey, all she needed was an opening to get the judges' attention. And she definitely accomplished that.
Look at Joe, he looks like a granddad.
And that wasn't the only thing she managed to accomplish.
I actually found one picture on the internet of you smiling.
Bloody hell's about.
Still, while the judges were amused, they were also pretty perplexed, considering that those caricatures were more horrifying than inviting. And it didn't help that, by sticking them into the cakes, they completely disintegrated.
Come eat some cake!
But in spite of the creepy caricatures, destroyed cakes, and a massive dose of plain old confusion, Audrey's creation was actually pretty spectacular.
Damn it! Graham just keeled over in his cake.
Yeah, I know. I thought she was screwed as soon as her cake fell apart. But she actually walked away with an apron here, but not before even the narrator took a moment to get in on the action.
Gordon bites his own head off.
Man, I love this show. Prepared to be amazed as this next dish had the judges at a complete loss for words. When it comes to Joe, he and the trash are old friends. But there have also been a bunch of dishes that have left him speechless.
Wow.
Just like this time, when one contestant brought a whole new twist to the table. Now, get this. If you're gonna take part in a cooking competition, you should know that it takes more than just skill to impress the judges. It takes heart, creativity, and a magic touch to make an impression. And guess what? This contestant right here had it all. Yes, I'm talking about Sue, a food blogger from Houston, who was featured in Season 11. But here's the thing, Sue wasn't just a regular blogger. She was a passionate food lover with roots in Burma, a place where every meal tells a story of resilience and gratitude.
Just like home, with a lot more cheering people.
So, when it was time to present her signature dish, she decided to present a tantalizing Burmese noodle soup with shrimp and coconut curry as a tribute to her homeland. When Chef Sanchez and Joe walked in to check over her station, Joe was already all in for Sue's dish.
That looks amazing.
Well, I think we've already got ourselves our winner. And no, it didn't stop and start at the dish, it was the passion for her country that won our hearts.
I come from a third world country. We have to eat so that we can survive. So we are already grateful to have a bowl of rice every day where I came from.
Sue was brimming with determination to bring some of the most exotic dishes to MasterChef, and the judges were soon to see that.
Shall we taste?
As the judges dug into Sue's creation, the room filled with anticipation.
I have a thing that I say not to too many people, which is food of love.
And well, there was more appreciation yet to come her way.
And this here, Sue,
Yes, Chef.
is food of love. Well done.
Thank you very much, Chef. I'm very humbled.
That must have been one of the biggest compliments anyone who calls himself a chef can receive. Even Sanchez couldn't help but praise her creation.
That is truly something special.
It means a lot to me, Chef.
Now, when it came to Joe, one thing was clear. He was already sold. I made that much clear earlier. But when he actually started talking, there was no room for doubt.
A profound immersion into Burmese cuisine.
Thank you very much, Joe.
This dish undoubtedly stood out as a true masterpiece, transcending cultural boundaries with its exceptional taste and execution. As for Chef Ramsay, well, he was just plain wholesome.
It's the best dish I've tasted all night.
As the praise poured in, Sue found herself standing there totally blown away, her eyes sparkling with joy and gratitude. Suddenly, it hit her. Her cooking wasn't just about making good food. Well, it was about touching people's hearts and taste buds alike. And man, did she leave an impression. So when it came to handing out that apron, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that it belonged to Sue.
Congratulations. Come over, please, young lady.
Thank you very much.
But hold on, turns out Joe and the judges were itching for her to leave, but maybe not for the reason you'd instinctively expect.
And go away so we can finish eating the rest of the
Yes.
If someone were to dismiss me for such a trivial reason, I'd be absolutely thrilled. It was quite evident that Joe was thoroughly enjoying himself, which came as a complete shock considering his usual, well, everything. Attitude, taste, you name it. Sue's mastery of one exceptional dish was enough to solidify her standing in the competition. But hey, she wasn't the only one that managed to impress the unimpressible Joe, because this contestant from season 13 left him speechless.
I'm Purvi from East Windsor, New Jersey. My specialty is American and Indian fusion cooking.
I'm talking about Purvi, a culinary enthusiast known for infusing Indian flavors into her dishes. In episode 1, she was all set to bring her A-game in hopes of snatching an apron.
Indian community in New Jersey is really big. I feel so proud to represent them. I'm making bundt cake with Indian flavors.
The pressure on her shoulders was something else, man. I mean, not only did she have to impress the judges to make it onto MasterChef, but she also had the weight of everyone from India counting on her success. Talk about a heavy load. And then her dessert, the vanilla bundt cakes with all the amazing Indian spices mixed in. Could it be the golden ticket that could lead her to success in the competition?
I've been doing this for the last 21 years. I can do this in my sleep.
Alright, so when it came to the judges' verdict, they were totally hooked in from the start, seriously intrigued by what she had whipped up.
Wow.
I love it. It reminds me of like an Indian festival wedding when there's just color and there's vibrance everywhere.
It looks stunning. I'm dying to get in there.
When a dish looks as beautiful and vibrant as hers, I'd expect nothing less. I mean, if it were me, I'd never dig in. Because just look at that. I'd honestly feel so bad ruining such a work of art. And the judges thought so too.
Oh, look how moist it is.
Joe, who usually takes his sweet time to give a verdict, was the first one to take a crack at describing what was in front of him.
Yeah, really good. I just got back from India. The most incredible flavors gives me a new appreciation of tasting your dish.
You know what? That dish was seriously off the charts, like mind-blowingly good. He was so absolutely floored by how delicious it was that he didn't even bother waiting for the rest of the gang to chime in with their thoughts before throwing his vote into the ring. It was like he couldn't contain his excitement and just had to let everyone know how awesome it was right then and there.
It's a yes for me. I really liked it.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Now, I don't know how often you've seen him make a vote like that, but for me, it's a rare sight for sure. As for the other judges, they obviously shared the same excitement that Joe did.
This bite, it is so moist and fluffy.
Thank you
like it
so
has
much.
levity and balance.
Thank you so
Definite
much.
Yes.
Purvi couldn't contain her joy when she saw how the judges thoroughly enjoyed her dish. She was overwhelmed by the impact her creation had made. Watching the judges savoring every bite felt like a victorious moment, one that she would remember for a long time. And let's be real, this vote was probably the easiest decision ever made in the history of MasterChef. Like, no contest, right? But Sanchez, you know, he totally tried to spice things up right in the middle of everything. Like, seriously, talk about drama.
I'm not gonna say yes just yet, okay? So I have to think about this for a little bit.
However, let's be real here, it was pretty obvious he was just trying to grab some attention yet again. I mean, come on, a little while later, he caved in and gave up. Classic move, am I right?
All right. For me, it's an absolute yes.
Yeah, he couldn't wait any longer. As for Chef Ramsay, well, he decided to dive right in at the first given opportunity.
It's a resounding yes.
Thank you so much.
That's 4 yeses.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
In the end, with a resounding yes from each judge, Purvi's dish became the highlight of the night. But it was Joe's unexpected response that steals the show. Now, you have to agree, this dish set a standard, especially in Joe's eyes. And this next contestant came in close competition. In the high-stakes kitchen of MasterChef, one single misstep can lead to a disaster. But sometimes, amidst all the pressure, contestants manage to leave even the most seasoned judges stunned. Just like this time when Kenny, a 46-year-old Boston native, blew the judges' minds.
I've always wanted to give people the great food that I give my family. This is my opportunity to do that.
You see, Kenny may be from Boston, but his roots, now that was something both him and Joe had in common.
I had great-grandparents that came from Naples and Sicily, so I had influences from all the regions of Italy.
But let's see if that actually works in his favor, cause, you know, it may only serve to give Joe an excuse to judge him even harder. So what happened is, when Sanchez and Joe walked in to check in on him, Joe was quick to notice this odd connection.
What's your name?
My name's Kenny Palazzolo.
No doubt that you're from Boston.
I am definitely from Little Italy in the north end of Boston.
I mean, given the circumstances, his reaction was pretty normal. The connection to someone from the same country as you in a foreign land is just something else. As for the dish, it wouldn't take a genius to guess what Kenny was preparing.
A New York strip, brzolatini, salt and buca, stuffed with prosciutto and cheese.
Well, isn't it just so fitting that Kenny went with an Italian classic like New York strip braciole? I mean, he was all for embracing his roots, paying homage to his family's culinary legacy. But get this, it wasn't just about the dish itself. Nah, it was something totally different that really showcased his heritage in a whole new light.
What do you say? What kind of Italian do you speak?
I speak North End Italian.
Man, let me tell you, I saw it from a mile away that Joe would jump on the accent bandwagon. And guess what? When the moment of truth arrived and everyone was presenting their dishes, Kenny not only managed to win Joe over with his cooking skills, but also captured his heart in the process. It was like a double win for Kenny, leaving Joe absolutely smitten.
I brought you a New York strip, brzolatini, salt and buca, on a bed of vegetable risotto.
No doubt, the judges were blown away by just the plating of his dish.
Look at that presentation.
Visually, you've got it going on there, my man.
I did my best.
It looked visually stunning, but would it deliver on flavor? Now, this is where Joe really started to worry. He couldn't help but wonder if Kenny's dish would really live up to the hype.
The bresaola not stewed in tomato sauce, it's basically a grilled stuffed steak. So this is an interpretation of what would be classic Italian.
The dish was an interpretation of classic Italian cuisine, and I don't have to tell you how important this was for Joe. As the judges took their first bite, anticipation hung in the air. And then it was time for the verdict.
That's wonderful.
You've defied the odds because I'm amazed you got that texture from a New York strip.
The judges were all here for the dish. And Kenny, well, let's just say his grin could light up the whole kitchen. But the judges realized that there was a tiny, tiny flaw.
It does need homework on that risotto.
I needed another 2 minutes.
The risotto may have needed a little bit more time, but it seems like Joe didn't care, because if you replay the clip, you'll see how he was itching to go in for another bite. The dish was a hit in his books. Anyway, despite the minor flaw, the judges saw the potential Kenny had.
I can taste the passion. That's evident. For me, it's an absolute yes.
Kenny was able to create a dish that was near perfect within that given time frame, and this was proof of his impeccable skills.
It's really impressive. 100% yes for an apron for you.
As for Joe, he was willing to turn a blind eye to the minor flaw. Because, well, he was already impressed beyond measure. And maybe just a little biased. Maybe.
It's far from traditional, but it's well executed.
You see, the dish may not have been as traditional as he'd expected it to be, but he couldn't help but shower it with compliments.
And I think it's a really good interpretation of your personality into a tradition of Italian food.
Honestly, it was a pretty easy win for Kenny.
Benvenuto alla cucina di MasterChef.
Grazie, amico mio.
Prego, buona fortuna.
Grazie.
And believe me, he was more than grateful for having received the apron, specifically because it was handed down by Joe.
Joe Bastianich. To hear him say that he believed in me and handed me that apron, such a surreal moment in my life, I'll never forget it.
Well, this one dish propelled Kenny to being one of the top contestants on the show. But that's a story for another time, so let's move on. If you ask me, I think Season 12 of MasterChef was in a whole different league, with contestants from the previous seasons coming together to fight for the win once again. And in this battle, if there's one guy who stole the spotlight with minimum effort, it definitely has to be Michael.
It takes hours or days to make the broth.
Alright, so here's the deal for this episode's challenge. The contestants had teamed up with Grubhub to upgrade some of the most popular delivery items in the country. The one who nailed the challenge gets a sweet immunity pin and a spot in the top 10 with Shanika and Bowen. So each contestant got to pick a random takeout bag with a dish they had to work with. And what did Michael get?
Ramen.
Oh. Ramen? Oh yeah, the guy definitely had his work cut out for him. But that's not all. To make the task a bit more challenging, the judges decided to drop another bomb.
You will have 45 minutes to cook us an upscale gourmet version of your chosen takeout dish.
With the stakes so high, you can imagine the kind of pressure each contestant must have been going through. But was Michael up for the challenge? Well, you be the judge. Here's a look at what he decided to make.
It is very hard to make ramen. It takes hours or days to make the broth. Trying to figure out how I'm gonna elevate it and like put my twist on it.
Sounds interesting enough, right? But Michael had a good reason for picking this dish. Turns out, he had lived in Korea for a while, and so their cuisine was far from foreign to him. But guess what? This little life experience would eventually play to his advantage. As Michael confidently placed his dish in front of the judges, anticipation filled the air. But they were gonna have to taste it sooner or later, and that's exactly what they did. Joe took a cautious sip of the broth, and he was hit with an unexpected wave of heat. His reaction was priceless.
A little bit spicy.
Wow.
Maybe Michael should have dropped a spice warning or something, cause Joe definitely wasn't expecting that. It was clear that he wasn't exactly comfortable with all those Scovilles. And the camera ops were doing some serious work capturing his reaction right there. Joe struggled to find the right words to describe what he had just ingested. Whether because he genuinely couldn't think of something right away, or because the spice was preventing him from even putting a sentence together. But just as the tension reached its peak, the judges finally zeroed in on two dishes that stood out from the rest.
Michael.
So, was the bold flavor a risk worth taking? Let's find out now. Regardless of the initial shock that Joe had received, he was actually pretty impressed with the dish once his taste buds had recovered.
Everything looks super elevated.
As for the other judges, they chimed in with more appreciation.
The presentation is clever. You're using the crispy little rice noodles as a textural component. Looking forward to trying it.
And since one judge had already experienced the heat before anyone else dug in, Michael decided to warn them.
Of course, I like my ramen spicy.
Yeah, no kidding. But let's see if Chef Ramsay would be able to take the heat.
Dish is delicious. Love the take on that Korean influence, especially with the heat.
Hey, I'll give that a passing grade. As for Sanchez, he straight up said that the dish was award-winning, and a little bit of spice was never gonna faze him. If that wasn't enough, Joe had more to share.
I like the intensity of it. I don't know if you could eat a whole bowl of it, but all the components in the dish make sense. Very strong.
Well, sometimes taking risks can lead to greatness, and things luckily worked out in Michael's favor this time. Well, these contestants managed to leave Joe shocked with their delectable dishes, but there was this one contestant who left Joe dumbfounded for all the wrong reasons. But here's the real question. Are we gonna see another signature Joe dish thrashing? Go ahead and drop your guesses in the comments section down below. But for now, in Season 3, Episode 8, the tension was palpable as the contestants faced the day's dreaded elimination challenge. The challenge revolved around the judges' favorite desserts, and Felix sadly landed with the Herculean task of pleasing Joe.
My favorite dessert, tiramisu.
As the clock ticked down, the pressure mounted as Felix struggled to prepare a dish worthy of the judges' praise. When Joe decided to come check on her, he wasn't too happy about how things were going.
Were you not going to put it in a form? How are you going to make it?
On a plate, kind of more freeform.
Wow, that's risky.
Things weren't off to a great start. Regardless of Joe's concern, Felix was feeling confident.
Anyone can go home today, and you're in a competitive group.
I'm not going home today.
Well, we'll see about that. Anyway, with time running out, Felix was the first person to present her tiramisu to the judges. But even before she laid the dish before them, Joe happened to notice her expression.
Let's begin with tiramisu. Felix?
That was brutal. I mean, he sure didn't have any high hopes when it came to this particular dish. He was beyond disappointed.
You saw the standard, we put it up there, we asked you to execute it, and you come back with this. It's so disappointing.
And if that wasn't enough, he then dropped another brutal comment.
If it's bad, you will go home.
Hell yeah. There's no place for people who don't meet the standards on MasterChef. That's the one rule the judges have set. Either you follow or go home. And believe me, things weren't exactly looking up for Felix. But when Joe took a bite of her dish, he couldn't help but ask her one simple question.
Why'd you put nuts in here?
I like mac nuts.
Macadamia nuts in an Italian tiramisu?
I mean, how could she not know that? But just as Graham decided to taste the dish, Felix was already tearing up.
I'm sorry, I have to eat this.
Well, it's not even eating it, it's looking at it.
Like, to see her come up with something like this was totally out of character. And his reaction was quite expected. He deemed the dish terrible. And when it came to Chef Ramsay, he didn't hold back either.
Way too sweet, macadamia nuts, nothing. Looks as sad as you do, because it is a mess.
Well, it just looks like it wasn't her day. The tiramisu, if you can even call it that, was just a sad little puddle of mush. And well, according to the famous chef, this was Felix's worst performance on the show. If Chef Ramsay dropping that dire warning was any indication, Felix found himself in the bottom 3. Fortunately for him, Scott was the one who was sent home instead. Talk about dodging a bullet, whew.
To Scott. And get back to your station. Good luck, baby.
So, can you think of more times when Joe truly relished a dish? Or some times when it took him a few seconds to process what was put in front of him before, throwing it in the dumpster? However, this chef shattered all records for miracles in the kitchen, setting a new standard for being the best chef imaginable. And there's no other way I'd like to get started than to bring up the first ever blind contestant and winner of MasterChef Season 3. I, of course, mean the remarkably talented and skilled chef Christine Ha. But when Christine presented her dish in the 5th episode, something unexpected happened. She brought everyone to tears, including herself.
Come on. Come on.
So, what exactly happened that stirred up so many emotions in everyone? Well, it's pretty simple. Christine simply blew everyone away with her apple pie. I mean, just listen to the crustiness of this pastry here.
Can you hear that on top?
Yes, chef.
What does that sound like to you?
It sounds good and crusty.
Well, if you ask me, that sounds absolutely delicious.
The flavor's amazing.
So what happened is, the blue team had lost the challenge and the red team had to face a super intense pressure test. One of them was definitely going home and everyone was feeling the heat.
Go into a pressure test after what I already feel was a pressure test. I'm just really, really stressed out.
The next day, all the chefs gathered for a pressure test, and guess what? They had to make apple pies, the most American of desserts. But here's the catch. Christine, who was visually impaired, was worried about how it would go down.
I know I need to still put that pie together, and so I'm thinking this is my night, I'm going home.
It's really sad how she thought this challenge might get her eliminated. Like, could you imagine the stress she was experiencing? Despite that, Christine didn't let her lack of confidence hold her back. All the contestants had to make the same damn thing with the same freaking ingredients. The only difference being they had to add something special to stand out from the rest. The chefs were then given an hour and 15 minutes to work their magic. As for the judgment, this pressure test would be judged based on the filling of the crust and the overall baking techniques used to whip up some delicious apple pies. It was a high-pressure situation, and everyone was feeling the heat. And you could really see that the tension kept getting worse.
Cindy, did I cut myself? Am I bleeding?
Now, I get why Christine turned into a nervous wreck. The judges were aware that Christine was at a disadvantage as well once the pie hit the oven. How could she know if the pie was cooked if she couldn't see the color of the crust? And that's exactly what was worrying Christine sick.
I'm gonna have to rely on Cindy to tell me the color of the crust.
But despite all the challenges and the fact that she snipped her finger, yes, that happened too, Christine was literally trying to give it her 100%. And it's not just me. Several viewers were totally on board, rooting for Christine to stay in the competition. People couldn't help but notice her calmness, determination, and unwavering strength. Even when she doubted herself, she approached each challenge with a level of excellence and professionalism that was truly inspiring. One viewer noticed how there was not a hint of cockiness or arrogance in this woman, just a genuine sense of self that went beyond the awareness of her own incredible abilities. She proved to be a true master in every sense of the word. The 3 judges had their own doubts, but they were also really hopeful.
But the thing is, she does know how to cook and she knows how to season.
With only 40 minutes left, it was time to put the pie inside the oven. And this challenge turned out to be hard not only for Christine, but all the other contestants as well. Somehow, none of them had been able to get their pies baking yet. But things got even tougher for Christine when this happened.
There's no way, I just don't have any more flour.
Felix, do you have extra flour?
I'm sure she never expected that to happen. The flour literally broke into pieces and she ran out of it. Christine had to ask another contestant for some extra flour. And well, at this stage of the competition with time closing in, everyone started to doubt if she could make it. But Christine didn't give up. She started from scratch and whipped up a new pie in no time. The sad part is, she couldn't visualize her pie nor could she taste it, which made things even more challenging for her. And when the time was up, Christine was the last one to have her dish judged. Despite her visual impairment, her pie looked amazing and the judges were blown away.
Visually, it looks stunning. It's got a nice crisp, dark brown colour on the edge.
Chef Ramsay, being his usual self, tried to boost her morale by asking her to stop doubting herself.
Stop feeling upset with yourself.
And finally, it was time to give the pie a taste. When Chef Ramsay took a bite of Christine's apple pie, you'll have to watch the video to find out what happened next. Trust me, it's worth it.
It's delicious. So well done. Okay?
I think Ramsay was moved more by the flavors of the dish than her tears, and Christine deserved every bit of that appreciation. Several users mentioned that Christine was their all-time favorite contestant on the show, and whatever she accomplished with her disability was truly inspiring. They even appreciated the efforts taken by Ramsay to explain every single detail of her pie, which was very heartwarming indeed. Another user beautifully explained how Christine was a gem who didn't give a crap if someone had anything negative to say about her. Well, that's how Christine is. Going by the way she navigated throughout the entire competition, it should be proof enough to validate this statement. But sometimes you need to pay the price because of the mistakes made by others. Yeah, team challenges can sometimes be unfair to a few contestants, but that's what the show is all about. Well, something similar happened to this contestant who should have ideally been chilling up on the balcony, safe and sound. But here's the thing. Even if he's a badass chef, would he be able to impress the judges with his food and make it to the top 5? Well, let's just see what happened. In the 15th episode of Season 7, the contestants were driven to a pop-up restaurant. Once there, they had to whip up 2 appetizers and 2 entrees for the guests. The teams were led by David Williams and Katie Dixon, and this guy named Sean O'Neill was on Katie's red team. Now, after all the hustle, the blue team won. But let me tell you, Sean from the red team didn't deserve to be called a loser. He was an amazing chef, hands down. He nailed the pop-up restaurant challenge, and there was no doubt about it.
So you guys enjoying the red team's food tonight? Oh yeah, red team. Great, all the way.
But now, the poor red team had to face a freaking pressure test. They were presented with 3 amazing chocolates by each judge. And what was the task, you ask? Well, check this out for yourselves.
You won't be making just one of these desserts tonight. You'll be making all 3.
They had to make 3 chocolate desserts in just 1 hour. Talk about real pressure. Each contestant had to prove that they had what it takes to be the next MasterChef of America. With such little time, needless to say, they had to hustle like crazy.
Just take that, Dan. Take that. Just take that, Dan. Just take that.
Once the time was up, the judges were ready to taste the chocolates. Now, Sean's first 2 chocolates didn't blow them away, but that doesn't mean they didn't taste good. However, when it came to the last chocolate, Ramsay gave it a bite, and this is how he reacted.
Chocolate molten lava cake is beautiful.
That thing was cooked to perfection within such a little amount of time. Meanwhile, the other 2 contestants struggled to get their desserts right. And let me tell you, Sean's dessert didn't just look good, it tasted freaking heavenly. Plus, this is what Chef Ramsay had to say.
It's delicious.
It was really emotional to see that his hard work was being appreciated and that everyone in the room felt the same.
I pushed myself so hard.
That's what MasterChef is all about.
And when it was time for the results, just as you'd expect, Sean was the first one to be saved. The judges couldn't stop praising him and giving him props. But sadly, poor Katie got eliminated. They asked her who she thought would win MasterChef, and she didn't hesitate to say this.
Sean, the way that he's handled himself throughout this competition, I truly respect.
Yeah, he's a badass chef who aced every damn challenge thrown at him. However, imagine what it feels like to whip up an award-winning masterpiece. Later on, the contestants were asked to make a dish using only the ingredients from a mystery box in the 5th episode of Season 2. Nobody expected to see one contestant stand out from the others by a long shot. The judges were all set to pick their top 3 dishes and the absolute worst ones as well. But here comes the surprise that everyone was dying to know. What exactly were those mystery ingredients? Well, let's find out. When it was time for the judging, they first announced the worst dish, and guess what? Poor Ben Starr's dish took that title. It was a major bummer. Then the first dish that caught everyone's attention was Susie Singh's. She went all out and cooked up pickled salmon, smoked salmon, and grilled salmon. But here's the twist. The judges weren't blown away by the taste, but at least they were satisfied. However, this is where things get really insane. Brace yourself for this contestant named Christian Collins, who literally made the others shake in their boots.
I think would certainly win the award for being the most restaurant-ready. Christian.
Yeah, his dish was considered award-worthy. The judges were about to taste it and see whether it was worth the hype. And let me tell you, he didn't disappoint. Christian cooked up a pistachio-crusted salmon with strawberry and balsamic reduction. And well, it was a flavor explosion. First came Joe Bastanich, who couldn't help but shower him with compliments. He said that the salmon was cooked to perfection, crispy on top, but still juicy and tender on the inside. But here comes the bonus.
And the bonus was the effective use of the strawberries. Well done.
Then came Graham Elliott, who had a very similar reaction. He had seen other contestants attempting to crust their fish with pistachios, but Christian's dish was next level. The crust was even and beautifully done.
Yeah, really yummy. Really good job.
And now it was time for the one and only Chef Ramsay to taste it. Could you imagine the pressure? But guess what? This is how it turned out.
Absolutely on the money. Good job. Well done.
Ramsay was straight up impressed by the taste and quality of the dish. Damn, that's a remarkable feat, impressing all the judges like that. It's not an easy task, but Christian did it. And with this dish, he left his mark on MasterChef like no other. In fact, he became the freaking winner of the first Mystery Box Challenge. How awesome is that?
Congratulations, Christian.
As a reward, he got to choose the style of food that everyone would have to cook for the elimination challenge. Now, that's a major power right there. Christian showed everyone that he was a force to be reckoned with in the kitchen. Alright, next, let me spill the beans about this gutsy contestant from season 10 who decided to ditch playing it safe and went all out with a challenging dish. Plus, he did it in the limited time that he had. So, in the 5th episode, the judges tasted a little bit of every dish and checked out the presentation. Then, before picking the best dish, they decided to choose the worst 3 of the night. And it turned out to be Samuel Has, Elizabeth Lin, and Fred Chang. But luckily, it wasn't elimination time, so they were safe for now. Phew!
You 3 are lucky that tonight is not elimination.
Now, it was time for the judges to go deeper into the other dishes that stood out. They called each contestant forward, and one contestant was specifically summoned because their dish looked incredible. Seriously, it could rival a fancy restaurant dish. The contestant, Nick DiGiovanni, whipped up a mouth-watering Brazilian cheese bread taco with grilled skirt steak, corn salsa, and snapper ceviche.
And the fact that you did this is so bold, young man.
Thank you, Chef.
Clearly, the judges were really impressed by the presentation of the ceviche. They declared it to be the best of the evening. But here comes the plot twist. Despite the high expectations and drool-worthy appearance, this is what Aaron Sanchez had to say.
You went overboard on the Scotch bonnet. You really need to tone that down, young man.
With that, now it was time to dig into the Brazilian cheese bread taco. So, did it live up to the hype?
What you've done with that cheese, tortilla, and marinated steak, delicious.
Well, Nick managed to impress the judges with a new technique, and I totally think it worked in his favor.
Very intellectual take on a surf and turf. Really high thinking, great tasting stuff.
And the best part was that the dish was chosen as one of the top 3 best dishes of the competition. However, in season 8, when the top 20 contestants were pitted against each other, the challenge that awaited them was like no other. It was the 3rd episode, and you know things are about to get real when the mystery box comes out.
Grocery bag!
This time around, the mystery box was a grocery box containing 12 common ingredients found in any American home-cooked meal.
Chicken breast, ground beef, potatoes, canned tomatoes, carrots, white cheddar cheese, green apples, and chocolate.
To add to that, they also had access to the standard MasterChef staple pantry box. The home cooks had to use these ingredients to whip up a phenomenal dish within just 1 hour. Talk about a race against the clock. Once the 60 minutes were up, it was now time for the judgment. And let me tell you, the judges were not impressed. So what happened is, 3 dishes stood out, but for all the wrong reasons. They were a complete mess. But hold up, I've got some good news too. 3 home cooks managed to impress the judges with their dishes. So let's talk about the first one that caught their eyes.
Yoshika!
Yoshika Holston prepared biscuits and gravy with homemade chicken apple sausage, buttermilk pepper biscuits, crispy homemade fries underneath, and a soft scrambled egg on top. And it looked like a total delight.
I didn't have buttermilk, so I had to make it. Added buttermilk to it. Really high temperature for a short amount of time.
Chef Ramsay couldn't help but praise how incredible it tasted. He even mentioned how expensive it looked. Yoshika had nailed the breakfast dish, and he was sure that she would excel during lunch and dinner as well.
Biscuits, incredible. The potatoes underneath, they cook beautifully. Yeah, what would I change?
Next, it was time for Aaron Sanchez to taste the dish, and he was equally stunned. The judges applauded the finesse she showed in showcasing the ingredients and how well the dish was made. The flavors harmonized perfectly without overpowering each other. And the idea of baking the buttermilk and enriching the dough for the biscuits was exceptional. According to the judge, if there was one dish that should taste like it took 60 minutes to make, it was hers. The last judge to judge was Christina Tossi, and she was shocked to know that Yashika wasn't provided with chicken sausage, yet she managed to pull it off. She was so impressed that she even asked her to explain the process.
I took the chicken breast, ground it up with some spices, fresh dill, flavored it up with a little bit of cayenne, give it a little kick, little heat.
That dish was indeed exciting. Now, let's look into the story of this next contestant from season 4, who was faced with a rather intriguing question from the judge.
Or are you trying to deceive us?
It represents where I want to be as a chef.
It was the 4th episode, and the remaining competitors entered the MasterChef kitchen for their very first mystery box challenge. They were tasked with preparing and presenting an amazing dish using only the ingredients hidden under those mystery boxes. Now, the judges were watching closely, and they weren't in the mood for any fake or deceptive dishes. It was all about showcasing the skills with the basics before moving on to the more complex recipes. And when the contestants opened their boxes, it wasn't the most appetizing sight. Bacon! They were greeted with just a potato, some bacon, and a bunch of chocolates. What a peculiar combination. It made everyone wonder how someone could ace the competition with such limited ingredients.
And I thought it's a joke.
What do I have to do with this?
But hey, the contestants had to prove themselves, right? They had to work their magic with these basic ingredients, and let me tell you, it was both easy and difficult at the very same time. After observing and sampling throughout the challenge, the judges took a final look to identify 3 standout dishes. Among those, one dish stood out from the rest.
That dish belongs to Beanie. Great job. Yes!
Bimmy Cruz totally impressed the judges with his poached egg over hash with tomato basil salsa. Chef Ramsay was taken aback, and all he could say was wow and absolutely sublime. Well, the taste was on point.
The dish has got finesse. It's seasoned beautifully. Great start.
Graham Elliott was equally impressed, highlighting the sweetness from the caramelized potato and the smokiness from the bacon. But Joe Bastanich, as usual, was a little skeptical.
Smells a little bit like a fake to me.
Viewers were just as shocked seeing how ridiculous Joe was being with his overly fancy concerns. Bimmy then had to explain how the books helped him picture and style his dish. However, despite a few hiccups, Bimmy left the judges amazed and proud.
Where you're heading looks good.
Thank you, chef.
It was definitely a proud moment for Bimmy. And well, he proved that he had the skills and talent to make exceptional dishes even with limited ingredients. Well, isn't that what MasterChef is all about? So these are some of the moments that made the judges' taste buds dance with delight on MasterChef. It's these instances that remind us why the judges' passion for exceptional food shines through every episode. And also why contestants put their best foot forward to make their mark in the competition. Now, surely there must be many more dishes that left a lasting impression on everyone, including yourselves. From shaking hands to full-blown outbursts, these reactions were hard to watch. They embodied their home state's fair cuisine, something that screamed their state's identity. I mean, come on, the whole point of the state fair is the deep-fried food, right? But nope, the judges weren't letting them off easy. They were crystal clear about their expectations.
To cook an elevated version of classic state fair food.
Just sticking to the basics wasn't gonna cut it. They needed to elevate the dish, make it worthy of a MasterChef kitchen. And just when you thought it couldn't get any tougher, Chef Ramsay dropped another bombshell.
You'll cook alongside everyone else from your home region.
Yeah, they were in for a tough one. The winner would get the power to save their entire region from elimination. On the flip side, the worst performer, they'd be packing their bags. This season wasn't playing around, every challenge could be your last. As soon as the challenge started, the home cooks rushed to the pantry to grab their ingredients.
Let's go, guys. Yeah!
I got a corn.
Parmesan.
Ooh, okay. A tomato.
Speaking of disasters, let's talk about Wayne from the Midwest for a second, and that's where Wayne made his first mistake. Wayne wanted to bring the flavors of the Circleville Pumpkin Festival, which has been around since 1903, into the MasterChef kitchen. It was the perfect idea for this challenge, but the way he decided to elevate it, that's where he went wrong.
I'm gonna top it with the butter poached lobster to elevate it.
The goal was to improve the dish, not overwhelm it and lose its originality. But Wayne was dead set on making his plan work.
because I plan to win it for my team today.
When the judges checked in halfway through, Joe was already poking holes in Wayne's confidence, as he usually does.
Ever watched MasterChef before?
Maybe once or twice.
That should have been Wayne's cue to pivot, because if you've ever watched a second of Hell's Kitchen, you know how easily risotto can turn into a disaster.
Difficult dishes because it's so hard to make, and we're very critical.
Calling the judges skeptical would be putting it mildly.
And I believe if you're gonna step into the box, you try to make hard contact.
But Wayne had already made his choice.
You're swinging for the fences.
Yo, I'm gonna win this challenge.
Where are you from?
Columbus, Ohio.
Then, as if things weren't bad enough, Wayne hit a snag towards the end of prep. Of course he did. And you didn't need to be a culinary genius to see where this was headed, straight to elimination. But Wayne, he was blissfully unaware.
I've always taken risks, and I thrive in high-pressure situations.
Yeah, we'll see about that. When it was time for the judges to taste his dish, reality hit hard.
Tastes right to you?
It could be better.
Joe never looks thrilled, but you could tell this dish really put him in a foul mood. And Aaron, let's just say his face said it all. Pure disgust. But somehow, it was Wayne's lucky day. Remember the whole best dish wins immunity for the whole team thing? Well, Kyla came through, carrying the Midwest on his back and dragging Wayne to safety at the last second.
On the Midwest are safe from elimination.
Awesome.
All of you, make your way up to the balcony with your team.
Am I still salty about it? What gave you that idea? Anyway, the judges didn't let Wayne off the hook that easily.
That risotto was not on point tonight.
And if that wasn't embarrassing enough, Joe had a few more choice words.
Certainly would have been in the bottom. So you can thank your teammate Kyle for your spot on.
Talk about dodging a bullet. But the next contestant from the West, not as lucky as Wayne, let's talk about Amanda, who, in the same challenge that nearly got Wayne booted, decided to keep it simple.
I am making fish tacos.
You know, the idea of a taco could be something very simple, very straightforward.
Now, Amanda was all about that healthy lifestyle, and you could see it in her cooking. But since she had to stand out, she decided to take a little risk.
Do it two ways, kind of like my interpretation of that red and green sauce.
And just to make things harder on herself, she chose to make her own tortillas too.
I've ever wanted, and I just got my apron. I do not want to give it back.
It was a big gamble, and Aaron saw it for what it was. One slip, and the whole dish could crash and burn. But if she nailed it, she'd be sitting pretty. Unlike Wayne, Amanda knew exactly what she was signing up for.
Wheelhouse a little bit, Amanda, with this?
Way out of my wheelhouse. Way out.
She was going for a go big or go home moment, but sadly, we both know how this story ends. From the start, things didn't go as planned.
I'm not ready to go back and be a stay-at-home mom.
Amanda wasn't ready to throw in the towel, but the judges were thinking she should have switched gears a while ago. When Aaron asked if she was happy with her tacos, Amanda tried to put on a brave face, even though you could see the nerves creeping in.
The taco?
I do, and I'm happy with the tortillas.
Those very tacos landed her in the bottom 3.
I cooked something I've never cooked before.
Oh no, she's serving it.
When it came time for the tasting, Amanda's confidence took a hit, but she still tried to talk up her dish.
One is a very spicy red sauce. In California, you can't go to a fair without seeing tacos everywhere.
The judges, though, they weren't buying it. Nothing about the dish looked good. Chef Ramsay didn't hold back on his feedback.
300 meters down the road, I can buy one at $3. That will look better than that.
And he didn't stop there. He decided to give it to her straight, no sugarcoating. Amanda knew what was coming. She was on the brink of tears, but the judges had to break down every single part of that dish. And let me tell you, they couldn't find one good thing to say about it.
Very dry. It needs at least some color on there. It's just sort of floury and doughy. Knowing what you stood for,
I should have just done my...
I just quickly finished my sentence.
Even the fish? A total flop. Bland, no acid, no heat. Everything that could go wrong with those tacos went wrong. And Chef Ramsay didn't hold back. Amanda was so disappointed in herself that she interrupted Chef Ramsay mid-sentence. And you can imagine how that went over.
You stood for?
I should have just done my...
I just quickly finished my sentence, please.
Chef Ramsay was clearly trying to keep his cool. He didn't want to blow up on her because she looked like she might break down any second. Now, if anyone had a reason to be frustrated, it was Aaron.
And there's just pico de gallo, which is very rudimentary. There's crema.
Meanwhile, Joe was in the middle of a politeness arc or something.
For the first time, I said they were good because I'm polite.
Joe being polite? Now, that's new. Here's hoping it sticks around. Totally not foreshadowing. Anyway, Amanda's fish tacos missed the mark in every way possible, and you can probably guess what happened next.
Say goodbye to your Regents teammates and drop your apron on your stove, please. Thank you, Amanda.
Yep, those tacos were her ticket out of the competition. But the next challenge, it ended up being a double whammy for 2 contestants. Yeah, I'm keeping the season 13 train going because episode 16 introduced contestants to a pretty complex challenge.
Not the wall, like, come on, anything but the wall.
Colby was dreading this challenge even before it kicked off.
This is a chaotic challenge.
If you're new to the show, let me introduce you to a challenge that strikes fear into even the bravest contestants. The wall. In this challenge, the contestants cook in pairs on opposite sides of a wall. Sounds easy, right? Wrong.
Create dishes that taste and look identical.
Communication is their only tool to create dishes that not only taste the same, but look identical too. Every tiny detail has to be spot on. But that's not all the judges threw at them.
Both cooks from the worst performing team will be going home.
Double elimination. Even if you have a great night in the kitchen, if your partner drops the ball, you're both out. So Colby and Brynn got paired up and decided to make this.
We're making a crispy skimmed salmon with a parsnip puree, braised fennel, and a deep red wine, raspberry, and pear sauce.
Even with that wall towering over them, they went all in on a huge risk. Now, Chef Ramsay had never seen raspberry sauce paired with salmon, so he was definitely keeping an eye on them to see if they could pull it off. Colby and Brynn started off strong, but halfway through, communication issues started creeping in.
Oh, did you put it in already?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't tell me. All right, give me a second.
And with communication as their lifeline, they were heading for disaster. The judges picked up on it immediately. But beyond the communication breakdown, Joe wasn't even sold on the concept of their dish.
Never even heard of it. Forget about duplicating it from two people who are not seeing each other make it.
Yeah, this wasn't looking good. The dish had to be both delicious and identical, and trying something brand new in this challenge, that was a risky move. But it was the communication issues that really did them in. When it came time to plate, Colby got real nervous.
Don't worry, mine looks like messy too.
Good job, hun.
Not exactly the confidence boost they needed, and they weren't the only pair struggling. That wall was causing trouble for everyone. But when Colby and Brynn faced the judges, they weren't ready for what was coming.
These dishes look very different.
Their presentation was already lacking, but Chef Ramsay noticed something about Brynn's salmon. He was impressed with the cook, but the sauce on the outside, yeah, that was just weird.
Just looks bizarre.
Chef Ramsay was direct with his feedback, but Joe, he tossed all that episode 5 growth out the window and went back to his brutal self.
The sauce, they look like pureed baby food.
Ouch. Colby's plate had even more problems. And when Joe cut into Colby's salmon, what a mess. Meanwhile, Brynn's salmon was perfectly cooked, if that wasn't obvious by now. But there was no reason to celebrate. Not only were their fates tied, but that sauce was a total disaster, just as expected. Back to Colby's dish, Chef Ramsay couldn't have been more blunt.
No seasoning in the puree and a sauce again. It does not make sense.
And to pile on the misery, Joe had more to add.
With the dish is actually wrong on your palate as well.
They were way off the mark, and Brynn couldn't figure out how Colby's salmon ended up raw when he dropped his fillet 30 seconds before hers. Maybe he forgot to turn on the burner. Another mystery for me to ponder late at night. No doubt this was a tough challenge, but the outcome was about to be even tougher. When it was time to reveal the worst performing pair, Colby and Brynn knew what was coming.
Reagan, Jennifer, please say goodbye and make your way up to the balcony.
Despite the letdown, Chef Ramsay had some encouraging words for Brynn.
Wows every time. That's how I'm going to remember you.
As for Colby, he might have missed the mark that night, but Chef Ramsay was still impressed with his overall journey.
Cook with your heart, and that flavor profile is unique.
And with a lot of tears shed as they left, but hey, chaos is just another day in the MasterChef kitchen. Just like that time a tag team challenge spiraled into complete disaster.
Everything ready for our tart to tang. Layer those pears face down.
The tag team challenge is one of those wild twists on MasterChef. Two chefs work on the same dish, but they never cook at the same time. It's like tag team cooking, where one cooks while the other watches, and they switch back and forth until time's up. Sounds tricky, right? This time, Michael had an immunity pin, so he should have been safe. But since there was an odd number of chefs, he had to join the challenge anyway. The catch? No matter how bad he did, he couldn't be eliminated.
There you go.
Frankly, if I didn't have this pin, I'd be freaking out right now.
And guess what they were cooking? Just a little thing called beef Wellington and chocolate souffle, nothing too crazy.
Mushroom risotto.
A stunning beef Wellington.
Just when the pressure was hitting everyone hard, the judges threw them a small lifeline. Well, something's better than nothing, right? Things got really interesting when it came time to pick partners. Christian surprised everyone by ditching Willie and teaming up with Brandy. If you've been watching, you know Christian and Brandy are both big personalities who love to shout but struggle with taking it.
Whoever's on the side, make your voice heard. And whoever's working the line, keep your ears open.
Shanika promised to keep her ego in check and handle Bowen's quirks.
So I'm gonna have to put my ego to the side and put out the best dishes that we can as a team.
While Gabriel wasn't too thrilled with his partner's situation.
I'm not that kind of guy. I don't like yelling. So my main goal today is just focus on myself.
Not a great start for any of these teams. Brandy was worried about Christian's loud, aggressive nature, hoping he'd actually listen to her. Meanwhile, poor Willie got the short end of the stick.
Communication, so we have to make sure we're not too quiet. We're gonna have to open our voices a little bit.
The first switch happened just 10 minutes in, and it was already a mess.
Put the prosciutto first, and then layer them on each layer.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Bowen was having communication issues, leaving Shanika to figure things out on her own. Things got so chaotic that Chef Ramsay had to step in to calm them down.
Crepe, duxelle, ham, filet, and then roll.
Shanika was struggling with the Wellingtons, and Bowen seemed completely out of it. And if you know Chef Ramsay, you know he hates messing up beef Wellingtons. As the next switch approached, Chef Ramsay was all over the teams, pushing them to get those Wellingtons wrapped up.
Teams, you've got to get your Wellingtons wrapped.
Right, Shanika.
Yes, chef.
Come on, you gotta get that roll.
in.
Come on, Bowen, please.
Come on, move a little bit.
Bowen finally snapped out of it, but Chef Ramsay warned Shanika about Bowen's listening issues. Remember, even though it was a team challenge, only one member of each team would be safe, while the other would face elimination. Willie and Amanda's station wasn't smooth either. And just like that, another switch came up. Even if everyone was perfect, this challenge would still be a disaster. Despite the chaos, Brandy and Christian, and Derek and Michael were really impressing the judges.
Derek and Michael, look, they seem very, very happy to work.
I think it's a pair that could produce good dishes tonight.
Chef Ramsay even gave some praise to Dara and Fred, but their Wellington was far from perfect. Dara's freakout didn't help matters. With only 30 minutes left, Brandy and Christian still had major communication issues. But when it came to plating, Shanika stepped up big time and started turning things around.
Well done, Shanika. Good job.
Nice.
Come on, Shanika, well done.
This is all on you. Bowen, that. A burn is a burn.
Bowen was still on the edge of ruining everything, but time was up. It was a whirlwind of a challenge, and when Willie and Amanda went first, Joe wasn't holding back his critique.
That's definitely undercooked, and it looks a little bit too condensed.
Their beef Wellington had a lot of raw dough. Fred and Dara's dish also had issues. Their broth was off, the dough was undercooked, and the glazed pears missed the mark. Wellington was a mess. Next up were Brandy and Christian. Given the chaos, their dish was messy, but their seasoning was spot on. It could have been worse. Shanika and Bowen were a sight to see. Despite almost burning down their station, their risotto wowed Joe.
Before to one of my restaurants, this is what risotto is supposed to look like.
And that was just the start. Even Aaron was impressed with their Wellington. Who would have thought their chaos led to such high praise?
This is the closest Wellington to eating it in Gordon's restaurant. Proportioned, well cooked, well seasoned. Wow, good job.
Chef Ramsay wrapped things up with a nice touch. They totally nailed the challenge. The only other pair close to matching them was Derek and Michael, who wowed the judges with their tart.
The caramelization on the pears is magic. You did it right.
I can quite comfortably say I'd serve this in my flagship restaurant tonight.
Only one immunity pin was up for grabs. Still a gimmick if you ask me, and it went to Shanika and Bowen. That's a serious comeback. But for one competitor, their time in the spotlight had ended.
Keep a lookout, because I got more coming.
Gabriel had a promising start, but his passion had faded. He often looked lost and missed some basics.
Salt, you're missing the right amount of wine for acidity. It's missing.
Remember, it's always about the seasoning. Never forget to salt your food. As for Wellington's crust, Aaron wasn't a fan.
And that's why mine is cooked unevenly. It's a shame.
Gabriel's performance was his worst yet, but he wasn't alone in struggling. But what the next contestant had to deal with wasn't any better. In Season 7 of MasterChef, Nathan was doing great, impressing both the judges and his fellow contestants with his cooking skills. But then, things started to go downhill.
Nathan and Terry, are you ready to pick your teams?
Nathan, despite his earlier successes, hit a major bump that really tested his leadership and patience. He had just won the last challenge, which gave him a big role in the next round. This came with its own set of challenges, especially since not everyone was thrilled about him taking on this leadership role. As highlighted at...
Nathan is definitely a wild card. 20-year-old kid, and I'm weary of his leadership qualities.
Some contestants were really not happy about Nathan leading them, and that set the stage for the drama to come. When Nathan was picked to lead the next challenge, it was clear right from the start that he was in for a rough ride. The task was to serve 150 wedding guests, a huge job that needed perfect coordination and teamwork.
It's just like getting picked for dodgeball in middle school. No one wanted me then, and it definitely looks like nobody wants me now.
It was obvious that only a few contestants had confidence in Nathan as their leader, which showed a lack of support from his peers. From the get-go, things didn't go smoothly for Nathan. His team wasn't listening to him, which led to growing frustration. This problem became clear when Nathan struggled to get his team to follow instructions, started messing up their performance.
Guys, please stop. I'm trying to talk and you're talking over me, Sean.
His frustration built up quickly as his team seemed more interested in doing their own thing rather than working together under his guidance. Maybe his leadership skills weren't up to par. Eventually, he ended up shouting at everyone to listen to him.
Quiet!
Everybody calm, just calm.
He was really losing his patience. Maybe he was just too young and inexperienced to be a leader, but the yelling was non-stop. The team members were cooking scallops at their own pace even before the guests had even sat down for the wedding.
Nick's not even married yet. We're about to screw the wedding.
Meanwhile, nothing was going according to his plan, and everyone decided they'd rather listen to Sean at that point. His lack of leadership became pretty clear when he started shouting, hoping it would force the team to follow his orders. His frustration was obvious as he struggled to manage the situation. The team, however, was too focused on their own tasks to pay much attention to his outbursts. They were prepping food way too early, showing a serious lack of coordination and timing.
Sean, I I need you to stop.
Nathan and Sean got caught up in a serious power struggle. The tension was sky high as they dealt with issues that were really pushing Nathan to his breaking point.
Sean, I need those scallops now.
Whoa.
Oh my god.
The team hit a critical snag when they almost served undercooked scallops, which only piled on the stress. With the tight schedule, this slip-up didn't help at all.
Oh my gosh.
Come on, Nathan!
Despite the mess, things did start to get better over time. You know, when Chef Ramsay has some advice to share, it's in your best interest to listen carefully. If you don't, you might just end up failing spectacularly. If memory serves, Season 13, Episode 6 was quite the roller coaster, especially with the contestants facing their very first mystery box challenge. And guess what the secret ingredient was? Yep, you guessed it, apples. A fan favorite, and not just in the kitchen. Just to set the stage, the contestants were split into groups based on regions: Midwest, South, Northeast, and West. Each group had their own ideas about what they wanted to create, but Kyle had a special advantage. He got to decide which flavor profile each region would have to work with. Here's how it played out. 2 of the regions would be tasked with making sweet dishes, and the other 2 with savory. And since Kyle held all the cards, he decided to play the game strategically.
Presume we would like savory. Question is, who's the second savory?
For his home region, the Midwest, Kyle chose savory, thinking it would give them a solid chance. But then came the curveball.
Move on to the Northeast, Kyle. What are your thoughts? What will they be cooking?
So I think they're going to be cooking sweet tonight.
He decided to throw a wrench into the plans of the South and Northeast regions by assigning them the sweet flavor, considering them his biggest rivals. As for the West region, Kyle didn't see them as much of a threat, so he let them go with savory as well. And this is where things started to get tense.
It's a harissa rub scallops, and we're gonna have an apple.
Enter Wayne, the wild card from the Midwest team. After messing up with poor technique in an earlier challenge, he was given the savory task, even though he had been itching to create something sweet. This decision would set the stage for some serious drama in the kitchen. However, Wayne decided to go with couscous, which was a pretty bold choice, especially given his past disasters with risotto. Joe wasn't exactly confident in Wayne's decision either. He gave Wayne a heads up, warning him to make sure the flavors were balanced just right so that the apple would stand out, but not so much that it overwhelmed the whole dish. Now, let's turn our attention to Richie, who was handed the challenge of creating something sweet. You see, Kyle knew all too well about Richie's struggles with desserts, but this time, it looked like Richie had a plan up his sleeve.
Using the black Arkansas apple, and I'm doing a honey spice cupcake.
It was a bold move, no doubt, but it quickly became apparent that Richie had bitten off more than he could chew. Chef Ramsay even stepped in and warned him to reconsider his approach.
How are you going to get the batter done? Have you started the batter? It was very disappointing. I'm hoping you climb that ladder tonight.
The sweet tarts Richie was working on required a lot of time, focus, and delicate handling. But Richie, feeling confident, forged ahead. As the clock ticked down, there was growing concern about Richie's cupcakes.
They didn't rise. They didn't rise at all.
So they're going to be dense.
Yep.
Oh, damn it.
It turned out he made a critical mistake. He forgot to add the baking powder. And what was the outcome? The cupcakes didn't rise at all and ended up looking horribly dense. To make matters worse, he ran out of time and couldn't even finish the decorations. But Richie wasn't the only one in trouble. Kendall had his own kitchen disaster. Oh no, this isn't looking good, but it's just churros, right? How bad could it be? Well, it turns out Kendall really messed up. He accidentally switched 2 of the most crucial ingredients.
Like salty like French fries. There's no sugar on these.
The judges were left stunned, and Reagan had one of the most memorable reactions you could imagine.
Churros. You ever heard of such? Baby.
Kendall went from plating some of the best dishes earlier in the competition to presenting what could easily be considered the absolute worst. But hold on, we're not done yet. Remember Wayne and his couscous? After seeing Kendall's slip up, none of the judges were holding out much hope for Wayne. But when it was time for Wayne to present his dish, this is what went down.
It looks smooth and velvety. I like the plating.
Top-notch presentation.
And the taste? Even better than anyone could have expected.
With the scallops. Absolutely spot on. Really good job. Thank you.
To everyone's surprise, including his own, Wayne's harissa spice scallops with apple fennel puree turned out to be a total hit. Talk about a complete turnaround. However, with Jennifer's dish claiming the top spot for the evening, the entire South region was declared safe. Yes, that even included Kendall and his salty disaster. And honestly, Kendall could hardly believe how lucky he got.
Oh my God.
But here's where things really start to get interesting, because now it was time to call out the worst dishes of the night. And guess who was the first to be named?
A tarragon whipped cream on the side.
What are you calling them?
Tom cakes.
Who?
Yep, those cupcakes that Richie made could bring down the mood at any party. But wait, Richie tried to pull a fast one on the judges by giving his dish a different name. Yeah, a clever move, or so he thought. He figured a quick name change might cover up the fact that those definitely weren't what you call cupcakes. All he really needed to do was own up to his mistake with the baking powder, but Instead, Richie tried to play it off with a tactical maneuver. Unfortunately for him, the judges weren't having it.
You wanted to call them what they became?
And Joe didn't hold back with his critique. I mean, just look at that dish. There was absolutely nothing appealing about it. But did the taste redeem it at all? Let's find out.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'd love to see inside those home cakes. So it's missed the mark.
You kept talking about the sauce being soaked into them. You need a bowl of that stuff.
In the end, Richie's so-called home cakes earned him a spot in the elimination round. But Richie wasn't alone in the Great Fails Brigade that night. Take Charles from the Midwest team, for instance. He presented a pan-seared red snapper with apple and potato scales. Unfortunately, Charles made a glaring mistake that was impossible to overlook.
I didn't know that it was wrong for me to put raw white wine.
Ironically, the parts of the dish without the apple were the only ones that tasted any good. And then there was Lizzie, who served up pan-seared scallops with apple and celery root puree. But her dish had a serious issue too.
See right there, you've absolutely cremated the scallops.
The scallops weren't just overcooked, they were downright burnt. With so many culinary missteps, the judges now had the tough task of choosing the worst dish of the night. And who do you think it was?
Tonight was a bit of a mess, young man. You missed the mark.
If only Richie had come clean about the missing baking powder, maybe, just maybe, he could have avoided elimination. But alas, that's how it goes in the high-stakes world of cooking competitions. And let me tell you, you're so not ready for what happened in this next episode.
You do this, you do that, you do this. It's everyone's just kind of throwing things on like...
In episode 10 of season 10, Garen Hurt, season 9's winner, came back to his alma mater for, of all things, his wedding. Yeah, I've seen enough weddings on this show and Hell's Kitchen to know how bad things were gonna go here. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So the judges selected two contestants, Bree and Wuta, as the leaders of the blue and red teams respectively. While Bree decided to go with filet mignon, Wuta decided to cook lobster. Now that the menu was set, it was time to pick team.
This is the team that I wanted from first pick to last.
With a spare few minutes to plan their dishes around their chosen protein, Wuta's red team decided to go with this.
Discussion, but I'm thinking we do like a roasted lobster tail, maybe like a puree.
However, when Jamie suggested stuffing the lobster with breadcrumbs, Wuta couldn't have agreed any faster. But Dorian was concerned with the presentation angle. They were, after all, cooking for a wedding reception. Everything had to be spot on. Speaking of, the judges had their own part to play too. As the guests arrived, Joe surprised everyone by playing the guitar, while Chef Ramsay took on the role of the officiant.
There, you husband and wife. You may kiss your gorgeous bride.
Meanwhile, Wuta wanted to give his best. He was bursting with excitement to cook for Garen, his very inspiration for being on MasterChef. It had to have felt like a dream for him, but Dorian saw the eventual nightmare coming.
Are we gonna just go into it? We're good, trust me.
However, Wuta had put all of his trust in his team, and he didn't want to micromanage them. But, I mean, when you gotta dish out a large number of identical plates simultaneously, maybe not the best strategy. Anyway, when it came down to the distribution of the work, Jamie took charge of the lobster and was pretty clear on how he wanted the lobsters to be cooked. Meanwhile, Wuta, who was a vegetarian by the by, stepped away to assist Dorian with his prosciutto-wrapped asparagus.
What do you have done?
4.
Just make sure that they look neat, okay?
But while Wuta was the team captain, Dorian was doing more bossing around than he ever could. Seeing this, Noah, who had to sit this one out due to a shellfish allergy, was worried about Wuta's lack of leadership.
Our leader's not establishing a game plan.
There was no game plan or organization. Everyone was just doing their own thing. And his worries were warranted. Boy, were they ever. Because when Chef Ramsay paid them a visit, he wasn't even sure how much they progressed.
About the dish, what are you doing?
We're doing a stuffed,
So, Chef Ramsay took the plunge. The more Chef Ramsay dug into each dish, the more he questioned Wuta's leadership. Over on the other side, Jamie was cutting up all the lobsters and leaving them to dry out before cooking. Because why not?
Yes, chef. What happens to it?
It dies.
You can't cut a lobster like that and leave it there. All the goodness runs out of it. Do you understand?
Yes, chef.
But that wasn't even the worst part. Chef Ramsay wasn't convinced about their progress or Wuta's leadership. With 30 minutes down the drain, the judges decided to give Wuta's dish a taste.
Delicious. Like the lobster, the filling.
What it needs is finesse. You're up against the fillet.
I'm internalizing it.
Yeah, it was delicious, but majorly lacked finesse. Now, Wuta was forced to rethink his team's approach. His new goal was to make the dish enjoyable with just a fork. At first, the team had decided to split the lobsters down the middle, leaving one uncracked claw and the small legs intact. Wuta now wanted the meat released from the shell and the claws ditched entirely. And they were gonna need to make those adjustments fast.
Damn, we only got 60 minutes left. We don't have enough time to switch
gears.
But would they be able to deliver? Well, to hedge their bets, Sarah stepped up and took charge of preparing the lobsters.
You cut it straight down the middle. Break all of these rib bones.
However, releasing the meat from the shell was an extremely time-consuming and frustrating process. As they struggled to get the lobsters prepared in time, 6 team members, including Noah, jumped into work on the lobsters.
And now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In fact, 6 of the red team.
Unfortunately, Noah's shellfish allergy got the better of him in mere moments, and he had to back out before things got dicey. Despite all the efforts, when the lobsters finally hit the oven, they curled up and pushed all of their stuffing out.
Jeez, what's going on?
They're just falling apart. They're falling apart. I have no idea. They're literally falling apart.
Yeah, it was inevitable. And something else that was inevitable, Chef Ramsay having half a mind to kick them out and be done with it. With just 20 minutes remaining, the team was forced to come up with a third game plan.
You gotta take all this meat, cut the tails in half, and then load meat back into it.
But would they finally be able to make it? Well, they made it to the tasting at the end of the day. They presented baked stuffed lobster with fennel puree and prosciutto wrapped asparagus. Initially, the guests seemed to enjoy the lobster and its stuffing.
But then also this lobster.
Red team's lobster, a lot better. The breadcrumbs were really good.
However, not all of the guests were so lucky as to have perfectly cooked lobster. And then the complaints started coming.
Makes that happen. Look at that.
Poor Chef Ramsay was genuinely embarrassed. But the blue team had their own hiccups. You wouldn't know it from how I've ignored them entirely up to this point, but some of their steaks came out a bit undercooked. But, well, it was nothing compared to the red team's woes. Wuta's reluctance to actually lead his team led to 3 different preparations of lobster, all of which were a complete dumpster fire. Wuta felt crushed and took responsibility for the red team's colossal failure, but Jamie tried to shoulder some of that burden for them. Either way, the team's inability to execute a cohesive plan had ultimately cost them the challenge and sent them straight into a backyard barbecue elimination test. But that's a story for another time. You won't believe how one contestant's response completely backfired. This classic veal dish.
This is my pancetta wrapped veal with grana padano and sage, served with radicchio, apples, and finished with a very classic white wine sauce.
While Alexander whipped up a delightful panna cotta.
Passion fruit panna cotta with a juniper berry raspberry coulis, candied hazelnuts, and a lavender crumble.
At just 14 years old, Alexander had made a top-tier restaurant-worthy dish. I mean, this little guy deserved every bit of the MasterChef Junior title that he earned. But now, let's get back to the challenge. A few of the contestants would have to replicate Luca's savory dish, while the others would have to go with Andrew's sweet dish. And Elizabeth was pulling the strings.
My basic strategy is assign the panna cotta who don't have the finesse and pull it off, assign the veal to people who have weaker palates.
Now, on the surface, Alexander's dessert may come across as easier to make, but there were also those who found it really challenging.
Alexander's dish, a panna cotta, cooked cream, but held together with gelatin. Very technical thing to be able to accomplish.
Jamie was down to the final steps for her panna cotta, and that's when things took a turn for the worst.
Somebody took a panna cotta off my tray.
Jamie could not understand if someone was trying to sabotage her or if it was just a genuine mistake. What do you think? Was there a cat burglar amongst them that night? Either way, poor Jamie had no idea about what was happening. But she did end up paying the price for it.
First panna cotta, it just puddles.
Yup, the 2 containers of panna cotta she was left with didn't exactly meet the mark. And since she didn't even have her hands on a third, it made it all the worse. She was so devastated. There was quite frankly no hope left for Jamie, and she dreaded what was about to come. Now, when it was time for the tasting, nobody should be shocked that things didn't go in her favor.
It is not set up on me. If I would have had a third one, maybe.
But when Graham tasted it, despite the dish's disappointing appearance, the flavors were surprisingly on point.
It's like a really good pudding, but the flavor's great.
Either way, embarrassment was written all over Jamie's face. Given the situation, the only way she could stand a chance was if someone screwed up way worse than her, which at this point was remotely impossible. But look who stepped up for the tasting next.
Tyler, please, let's go.
3 blindfolds, please.
Chef Ramsay knew exactly what was going on, but he wanted to hear it from Tyler first.
Is there anything you want to tell me about this dish?
I had a, jackknife powerbomb the ramekin on the plate just to get it out of there.
Wait, does this dish look familiar to you? Look, it's not exactly like 2 contestants never failed in making a given dish on the show, but to make the exact same mistakes? Now, that could only mean one thing. And Chef Ramsay was ready to expose the truth.
Someone has brought us a dish that they did not cook.
But Tyler tried to put an act up. He looked shocked at the allegation Chef Ramsay was making.
What do you mean, Chef?
Stay there.
I mean, come on, Tyler, face it. You know exactly what he meant. But Chef Ramsay wasn't about to let the matter slide. Oh no. Like, what he had done was seriously low. And as the famous chef started marching to the back of the kitchen, Tyler started to freak out. The tension was as real as it could get.
I'm getting pretty nervous. My heart's beating as fast as it can beat. Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me.
And then came the major reveal. Chef Ramsay headed straight to the chillers, pulled out another tray, and walked right back to the front. Now, he only had one question for Tyler, and he expected a no-nonsense answer from him.
What do you see on that tray, young man?
My ramekins.
Your ramekins?
Yes, chef.
But Tyler decided to try and worm his way out of trouble.
I put my ramekins on the top shelf. I don't know if they got switched. I don't know, chef.
And the famous chef was having none of it.
You didn't. They're on the bottom shelf, bottom left-hand side.
You put 4 ramekins in the blast chiller. I just pulled out the same 4.
With that, Ramsay went ahead and revealed what had happened.
You served us Jamie's panna cotta.
Oh, damn, that's more like Hell's Kitchen behavior than MasterChef. Although Chef Ramsay for some reason decided to cut him some slack, I honestly believe it was a deliberate and desperate attempt to get ahead in the game. And the only reason he got caught in the act is because he stole from one contestant who screwed up the worst that night.
I think you panicked. I think you ran in there with seconds to go and grabbed somebody else's dish.
Tyler was caught red-handed, and apologizing was the only way out for him.
I had no clue. I apologize.
The final judgment came down to what the other 2 judges thought about the dish. Jamie's dish to be precise. And well, Joe was pretty straightforward with his decision and refused to taste something that Tyler hadn't made.
It would be disrespectful to every other contestant who played by the rules.
Although Chef Ramsay believed that it was a mistake, let's not forget that rules are rules. After some deliberation, the judges were ready with their final decision.
Tyler, I am so sorry, but your journey is going to end tonight.
And Tyler's response?
I understand your decision, and I appreciate everything you guys have allowed me to do.
He bowed out of the competition, respecting the judge's decision and dropping another apology for good measure. But guess whose response totally won my heart? Jamie's.
No, I'm sorry that you grabbed mine.
Such a sweetheart she is, huh? Anyway, you can't deny that it was one of the most embarrassing eliminations that's ever been seen on the show. But hey, Tyler wasn't the only one Chef Ramsay taught a lesson to in his day. Now, let me walk you over to what happened in episode 1 of season 9 when contestants were fighting for their apron in the auditions. And this is when we were introduced to Mark.
These people might be a little older, but they can't cook like me.
My name is Mark, and I am a dishwasher.
The confidence. Working as a dishwasher in his mother's restaurant in Maine, Mark was here to prove his worth. And for someone as young as him, the dude was beaming with confidence.
Growing up in a restaurant at such a young age really did steep me in the culture and the respect it takes to succeed in the kitchen.
But look, there is a clear difference between being confident and being overconfident, and this dude definitely didn't fall in the right category. Mark believed that he'd nail every dish in the competition, but he had no idea what was in store for him. When he was preparing his signature dish to impress the judges, Chef Ramsay happened to ask him a genuine question. Why didn't he go to culinary school? And Mark's answer kind of showcased the true extent of his arrogance.
I find that I've learned enough in my own field, personally, independently, and just as well through my own experience.
Yeah, this dude had no idea what it meant to be humble. I mean, I kinda sensed he was cocky from his earlier interactions, but this was on a whole new level. And Chef Ramsay's simple wow was enough to tell us exactly what he thought of the guy. But here's the thing. He wasn't just overbearing, he was deluded.
I'm one of the more talented people in this room.
And guess who vibed with his over-the-top confidence?
Even at 19 years old, you feel you're above the class.
Absolutely.
Anyway, despite all the boasting, his dish was nowhere near perfect or even fairly decent.
Visually, what do you think?
I like how it looks.
You're full of
The famous chef was all set to burst his little bubble.
You know and I know, but that's undercooked.
His lamb was grossly undercooked, and the fact that he tried to pass it off by saying it was decent really got on Chef Ramsay's nerves.
Man up a little bit. Got me?
Absolutely.
That must have hurt his ego real bad. But it wasn't just about the lamb. Even his cauliflower puree was more butter than cauliflower. And even for an old school chef like Chef Ramsay, it was way too much for him. And when Joe stepped up to the plate, he didn't have anything good to say either.
You got a lot of swagger behind the bench. You cook like a kid who's been in a restaurant. All the swagger and technique has to translate into a dish.
Joe threw shade at Mark's attitude and asked him to back his skills with a little more technique. And where would he learn that technique from?
You know where you learned that technique? Exactly the place you said you didn't need to go. Culinary school.
The burn, I tell you. I bet Mark regretted ditching culinary school now. Meanwhile, Chef Aaron chimed in by saying that the dish lacked imagination and was overall just plain disappointing. With that, it was now time to hand out the apron, and well, Mark obviously missed the mark by more than a mile. And you can say that his reaction kinda gave away his immaturity. While the famous chef asked him to hone his skills and come back the next year, Joe had an entirely different suggestion.
Mark, hold on a second.
You see, Joe recognized potential in Mark and offered to invest in him, but he had one condition.
You would have to take direction and listen to me as you compete to win. And if you broke that deal, the consequences would be severe.
And what do you know? Mark readily accepted the offer and earned himself a white apron. Now, I'll definitely be going over Mark's journey on the show and reveal whether or not he really lived up to Joe's expectations in some of my upcoming videos, but for now, here comes another Mark from Season 8 who became the target of Chef Ramsay's undying fury. So, in Episode 3, during the Mystery Box Challenge, yet another contestant seemed to be bursting with confidence.
I feel incredibly ready to win this whole thing.
The whole competition.
I didn't come here to lose.
Let's see if it was well-founded. Meet Mark Togney, arguably one of the worst cooks of that season. However, things didn't go as planned when Chef Ramsay singled out the contestants whose dishes stood out the most.
Sam, Heather, Mark. Head on up here, let's go.
Mark was left speechless. His joy was through the roof. Nevertheless, Chef Ramsay then made a crazy revelation.
Mark, Heather, and Sam, you three stood out for all the wrong reasons.
Yup, the judges were seriously let down by the subpar performance of the bottom 3 contestants, being Mark, Sam, and Heather. But things were about to take a turn for the worst. When it was time to taste Mark's dish, Chef Christina laid it all out by giving a brutally honest opinion.
The pancake, it has problems. It's undercooked.
But wait, there's more.
Stuck on the plate, it's like the finesse isn't there. The hash brown, it almost looks like a piece of meat.
Everything about the dish seemed to be way off. Especially my all-time favorite, the hash brown. I mean, come on, all that confidence earlier and this is what you came up with? However, instead of just owning up to his mistake, Mark thought that making excuses would be the best way out.
I feel like it was the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left and I ran onto the field without my helmet or my jock strap.
But Chef Ramsay had little patience for excuses, especially those infused with football jargon. In fact, Chef Christina also found the dish utterly disappointing. Knowing Mike's potential, she recalled the impressive ravioli that earned him an apron. And somehow, he found it necessary to resort to dropping some convoluted football terminology in his defense. Either way, Mike eventually found himself in the elimination test. And instead of working towards regaining the judge's confidence, he decided to take his sweet time getting things done.
I've been in this position in my life before. Pressure is my middle name.
When Chef Christina walked over to him for an update, at first, he claimed to be working on a redo of his pancakes with chocolate chips and baked eggs on the side. But then, he said something that left her completely confused.
If you don't execute the basic play first, then why you to try the flea flicker?
Back to the football analogies. This guy was a caricature of sports, bro. I mean, can someone please remind him that he wasn't on a football field, but in the MasterChef kitchen? Because just take a look at the pace he was working at. Chef Christina was legitimately concerned for him.
Looks like Mark doesn't care.
I might want to switch up here.
Yeah, she kinda had his attitude all figured out. But the famous chef was about to experience it firsthand. At the 10-minute mark, when Chef Ramsay decided to share a word of wisdom with Heather, Mike made a comment that pissed Chef Ramsay the hell off.
You know what you could do, Heather? Just do what I do and ignore them.
I mean, who does this guy think he is? The famous chef had had enough with the guy, and he decided to confront him once and for all.
Is this a joke for you?
No.
Is this just a big show off for your mates?
No.
Take it serious or take your apron off.
And believe me, it wasn't a mere threat, it was an ultimatum. And with just 2 minutes left on the clock, Mark wasn't getting any more respectful.
Mark, you've still got 1 minute. Mark.
I'm working on it.
The audacity of this man surprises me even after I've watched these clips hundreds of times after putting this video together. Now, fast forward to the tasting, and Mark was so incredibly confident about his dish. But the famous chef wasn't anywhere near matching his energy.
That is tough to look at.
And when Chef Ramsay asked him if that was the best that he could do, guess what he had to say?
Yes. I successfully completed the 28 sweep, and I think I scored a touchdown.
Ebony thought he was being a douche, and you know what? I couldn't agree more. Meanwhile, the famous chef wondered if Mark really had the passion and hunger to reach the top of the competition. As for Christina, Well, considering she all but babied him every step of the way, seeing him fail like this was just not fun for her.
And then that bacon you put in uncooked. Why not sear the bacon off beforehand?
Although she found that the pancake was cooked properly, there was a looming question that bothered her.
Really just a matter of whether a chocolate chip pancake and baked eggs is worthy of this competition.
With a dish like that and an attitude to match, one thing was sealed: Mark's fate in the competition.
Sam and Heather, make your way to the balcony.
He had it coming. Mark was then eliminated for failing to improve on his previous dish, and more so for his disrespectful attitude throughout the entire challenge. But this next contestant can rival Mark when it comes to being a smartass. Yep, I'm talking about Jeff from Season 8, and boy was he a handful. I mean, he's one of those contestants who mess with not just his competitors, but also the judges. Now, I gotta highlight this elimination challenge specifically when things started to get a little heated. This time, the judges threw an unusual curveball, where the contestants would not be performing solo.
All of these home cooks right here are going to be competing in teams of 2.
Jason decides who will be paired up for tonight's challenge.
That's right, teams of 2. Which means it all came down to communication, collaboration, and self-control. Now, having won the Mystery Box Challenge, Bowen was tasked with picking the pairs. And guess who ended up with Jeff?
Jeff's kind of roar will swallow up this person's voice. Caitlin, I pair you with Jeff.
Yeah, it was just a disaster waiting to happen. So, for the elimination test, the contestants were tasked with preparing an amazing Mexican platter.
We have some homemade tortilla chips with the wonderful pico de gallo. Right next to that, we have the spot prawn ceviche with avocado and shaved radish.
If this test wasn't already hard enough, Chef Christina then dropped a bomb that shook things up even further.
You're not going to be cooking together at the same time. One of you starts cooking, and your partner must stand at the end of your station.
And nope, she didn't stop there.
When we shout, switch, you will trade position.
Believe me, the pressure was insane. Because one of the pairs started to crumble like no other.
Searing the meat first, though.
Yep, exactly.
Yup, Jeff and Caitlin were struggling to get grips with the situation. Although they were off to a great start, soon they started to face challenges they never even imagined about.
The chips done and out of the way.
I make tortilla chips all the time. We don't need that right now.
Looks like someone's going through some major power dynamic issues. If you ask me, I think Jeff was just throwing unnecessary dominance into the mix in an attempt to control Caitlin's every move. Well, can someone please introduce him to the concept of teamwork, please? I mean, things got so obvious that even Chef Ramsay was quick to notice the growing power struggle.
Look at how controlling Jeff is.
Like, why am I even surprised? Now, don't forget that this was the same guy who didn't shy away from arguing with the Gordon Ramsay at every chance that he got. So, of course he was gonna try to assert his dominance wherever, whenever, and to whoever he could, right? Chef Christina had a different take on the matter though. According to her, Caitlin just wasn't strong enough to stand her ground, and well, in a way, both of them were at fault. One for being too submissive, and the other for being overly assertive. Interesting take, but she's not wrong. Because you can't deny that it was just painful to watch Jeff trying to be the boss. Especially when he didn't even command that kind of respect in the first place.
For the pico de gallo?
I can do this part.
Jeff completely ignored Caitlin's presence and went ahead on his own. In his desperate attempt to have everything come out perfectly, he forgot the main goal of the challenge. Yup, there's the whole notion of teamwork again. Strange how it keeps coming up, huh? Chef Aaron even came up to their station and told Caitlin that they needed to communicate better in order to work things out. But even then, Jeff's attitude towards Caitlin continued to be as cold as ice.
Those aromatics thing, you need to season that again for the vegetables.
I am going to, and I know what we have to do.
Correction, he was downright rude. Anyway, when it was time to present their dish, Jeff wanted something to be made known to the judges.
I took a leading role with this entire tag team challenge. Caitlin didn't bring a lot to the table.
My guy, it's because you didn't even let her. What's more, according to him, they failed to get the small details right, but everything else was on point. But Jeff's opinion didn't really matter, least of all here. First things first, Chef Ramsay made it clear that their inability to communicate and work things through as a team was frustrating to watch. And to make things worse, when he asked what they'd rate their platter, while Caitlin said a 3 or 4 at best, Jeff's answer went in a completely different direction.
I beg to differ. I would have actually gone a little bit higher. I would have gone a 7 because everything is there.
At this point, Chef Ramsay was so upset with him.
Because everything's there, it doesn't mean that this is on a 7. I am not going to accept that.
In fact, the famous chef was beyond disappointed.
Let's go to the churros. 7 is not. Let's get that right.
He decimated their platter, saying that the lamb looked like dog food, he wouldn't even bother looking at the tacos, and 4 of their churros would equal 1 actual churro. But that's not all.
I was working as fast as I can to shred it with 2 forks and...
I think that about says it all. To add insult to injury, Ramsay said that the only thing that he loved was the china that they served the food on. The one thing that they had absolutely zero part in making. Anyway, when it was time to decide who went home, the result was pretty obvious. No, it wasn't Jeff, it was Caitlin, for letting Jeff walk all over her. As Caitlin left with her head low, she brought a lesson well learned with her. In MasterChef, there was no space for contestants who can't take charge and speak up for themselves. However, this next chef truly left me wondering how he managed to get to this point. Well, if you ask me, I think Ryan Umane from Season 3 was hands down the most disliked contestant of the season. Right from his bragging and arrogance, this dude was even known to make some of the female contestants uncomfortable with his sleazy remarks.
I wouldn't want to have to take orders from a guy like that.
To begin with, Ryan introduced himself to the judges as the flavor elevator. He claimed that he spent thousands of dollars at fancy restaurants on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Wondering why? Apparently, he realized that he could cook the same food at home all by himself, but better.
When I could do this on my own, and not only can I do this at home, I could do it better than they're doing it.
You see the cocky behavior dripping right from the get-go, don't you? Well, not just that. Ryan quite occasionally mentioned how he believed himself to be one of the best cooks among all the other home cooks from that season. But despite all that confidence, Ryan was eliminated quite early on, landing in the 14th place in the competition. Now, Ryan was a jerk pretty much throughout his entire time on the show, but if I had to pick one episode, I go with this incident in particular. I'm talking about the one where Ryan's arrogance backfired during the first mystery box challenge. So, Ryan was the first to be called to the front for the top 3 position, and this is what Ryan had to say.
I'm really not surprised that my plate is one of the top dishes. These other cooks are gonna have to step up their game if they're gonna want to compete with me.
Oh yeah, the dude was so sure of himself. But he should have waited a little bit before celebrating his win, because guess what happened next?
You managed to cook what we think are the worst 3 dishes of this mystery box challenge.
Serves him right for all his self-righteousness. Next up, in the military challenge, Ryan showed up with his holier-than-thou attitude as usual, but it didn't end there. Even though Ryan was on the winning team side, he managed to douche it up by telling the ladies to showcase themselves a little bit more for some votes. Jeez, Ryan, do you have any dignity in you, man?
If ever there was a time to flash a nip, ladies.
I'm not doing Dude, that. Shut up.
Well, since I've already established Ryan Umane's arrogant and misogynistic side, let's take a deep dive into his self-proclaimed attitude. In episode 6, Chef Ramsay managed to get away with pulling Ryan's leg. However, his narcissistic nature simply couldn't make heads or tails of it.
I'm gonna win the whole competition.
Top 10?
I'm gonna win the whole thing.
Top 5?
I'm taking home the title, Chef.
Top 3?
I'm gonna go home with the check, the cookbook, and the title.
Even though Ryan every now and then turned up to the occasion and presented a beautifully done dish, you gotta catch a glimpse of Ryan's sadistic side too. Like this moment right here.
Time to throw some people under the bus here, right?
Ryan had the chance to choose a protein of his choice for his fellow contestants, and would you believe it, he was so sadistic. He chose to hand Christina Ha, the home cook who was blind, a live crab to cook with. What's more, he even had this smirk plastered all the while.
Got it.
But look who won the season. Christine managed to show him his place by simply being herself, and I'm sure her win stung real bad.
Yeah, it's really awesome. You knocked it out of the park, Christine.
Thanks.
Anyway, I'm so glad that Ryan's egotistical attitude didn't take him too far in the competition. And, well, it was quite satisfying to see his bestie throw him under the bus without even saying as much of a word.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you see that other sly dude right there? He didn't even try. Well, at least Ryan valued friendship, right? Anyway, up next is a contestant who's arguably one of the worst MasterChef has ever seen. It's really not surprising that his time on the show was this short-lived.
Well, I'm a powerhouse guy, so I need to start with a good breakfast in the morning.
You see, Mark Tongi was very confident going into the competition because winning MasterChef has always been his dream. However, he was generally rude, had a bad attitude, and was insanely lazy. Not exactly winner material, right? To make things worse, he also made pointless and annoying football analogies that only he seemed to understand.
If you don't execute the basic play first, then why you try the flea flicker?
Yeah, I watch a ton of football and still have no idea what this guy's going on about. Mark was very delusional about his capabilities. He thought he had all the skill, passion, talent, and resilience in the world. But one look at that guy should prove him wrong in an instant.
I feel incredibly ready to win this whole thing.
The craziest part was that even after being eliminated, he was still in denial about his bad performances and behaved like he had no interest in winning. Where was that dream of his now, huh? Just like our boy Ryan, Mark was a little too full of himself. I mean, just look at his pretentious reaction to getting into the top 3 in the first mystery box challenge.
I feel like Aladdin on the carpet, just floating by my competitors. I'm gonna be getting the advantage.
But just like what happened with Ryan, Mark Togney faced the same shame of being duped into believing that his dish was top 3 material. Oh yeah, a deception so nice they pulled it twice.
All 3 of your dishes were a mess.
Satisfying, right? Well, thanks to Chef Ramsay, Mark was finally given the reality check that he needed. When it was time for the feedback, the judges reviewed the bottom 3 worst dishes. And, well, Mark was told that he didn't live up to the standards of the competition, nor to the standards of what he cooked for his audition. And what was Mark's reply? He made yet another football analogy, which led to Chef Ramsay rolling his eyes. And rightfully so. I mean, come on, just read the room, dude.
I feel like it was the 4th quarter with 2 minutes left, and I ran onto the field without my helmet or my jock strap, and I left both my proteins on my table.
Anyway, Mark safely found himself in the elimination round, where the 3 contestants got the same ingredients to cook with. And between me and you, Mark managed to butcher this as well. While Mark was busy redoing the same dish that he had messed up in the mystery box challenge, all the while moving at a snail's pace, he tried to do his very best to give off a cool, athletic vibe to impress the others.
What's with all these football analogies?
I was an athlete back in the day. That's how I deal with this.
Keep your eye on the clock. You
All right,
got
thanks,
this.
Christina.
As Chef Ramsay was about to leave Heather's station at the 10-minute mark, Mark encouraged Heather to disregard the judges' recommendations. And oh boy, you have to see Chef Ramsay's reaction. The famous chef confronted him about it, all but saying that he was making a complete joke out of the competition. While Ebony accused Mark of lacking respect for the competition, Chef Ramsay went the extra mile, telling him to take things seriously or take off his apron.
Take it serious or take your apron off.
Even though Mark thought his dish was way better than the one that came before it, it was the last one to be called out to the front. Chef Ramsay thought that the chocolate chip pancake served with baked eggs along with bacon and cilantro of all things was an obnoxious combination for breakfast. However, when Ramsay asked Mark if he was happy with what he presented on the plate, he boastfully said that he was. According to him, he had done everything correctly and was only there to win. But no, he didn't exactly say it in those words. He had to drop yet another football analogy.
I successfully completed the 28 sweep. I think I scored a touchdown.
Just stop, man. Either way, that was the last of football Mark. I guess you could say he fumbled at the 5-yard line, or, well, even that's giving him too much credit. And now, it's time for the most exciting and unnerving contestant, the one Karen to rule them all. I present to you the infamous Chrissy Biasello. Now, Chrissy has proved to be the most volatile contestant to ever participate in MasterChef. No wonder Season 4 had some pretty insane ratings.
I definitely want the advantage, but I definitely want to beat Natasha.
See, Chrissy may not have won the season with her cooking skills, but she definitely didn't fail to serve an unpleasant air of animosity amongst her fellow home cooks.
I honestly have never instantly hated someone so much. He's just an epic fail at cooking.
She had one of the poorest team challenge records ever, and was a steady cook in individual tasks, despite occasional discrepancies. But her attitude was one of the worst in the history of the show.
Howard, Natasha, they hate me.
Are they afraid of you?
I think so.
I mean, what was that? Even if she initially misjudged, her large mouth and fierce, disgusting, and wait, I'm not done yet, her harsh, abrasive, and cutting temper somehow managed to turn everyone against her. I mean, just look at her flipping another home cook off.
I think it's gonna be mac and cheese girl over here.
Mac and cheese guy.
Yeah, there were times that I could have sworn I was watching Hell's Kitchen instead of MasterChef. Because, like, she was the first contestant in the history of the show who continued to threaten physical violence at every turn. And somehow got away with it. By the way, she also took pride in being a bully, having admitted that she had beaten up other girls in high school.
I have more enemies than friends because I never got to my mail shop.
And yeah, she didn't mind trying it again. But guess what? Despite all the showboating that she got up to, it failed to show in her cooking. Turns out, she was one of a very small club of MasterChef contestants to not perform well in group team challenges ever. Like, take what happened in episode 5 for instance. It was the first team challenge of the season, where Jordan picked her to be in his team, the blue team. And do you know how Chrissy reacted? Well, check this out.
Everybody's scared of my mail. Everybody thinks I'm kind of like going to take over. Let's go, you son of a bitch.
She was all set to kill it, but things didn't exactly go her way. Although the team challenge started off well, eventually the blue team ended up losing the challenge. Now, of course, Chrissy was pissed about it. And as usual, she didn't take any of the blame and pinned it all on Jordan's failed captaincy.
Jordan frazzled everybody. It was a show, a complete show from start to finish.
But this is when things got even more interesting. Before deciding on saving himself, Jordan made the decision to save Howard and James when the losing team returned for the next round. And what was Chrissy's reaction this time? She proceeded to call it a bitch move, saying that Jordan would have gotten his butt kicked in no time flat if he were in her neighborhood.
Listen, honor is honor. That was a bitch move. In my neighborhood, that'd get your ass kicked.
Yeah, what did I tell you? She was ready to take anyone head on. Over time, she turned into the biggest bully on the show. She refused to accept responsibility for her mistakes, held on to small grudges, and targeted other home cooks without a cause.
Whispering to buddies around you is not going to help you. Have the balls to say it up here in front of me.
From cornering her fellow contestants to even getting into verbal arguments with the judges themselves, Chrissy was on fire. However, this loud behavior overshadowed her culinary prowess, and this led to her eventual ejection from the competition. But that's not all. Let me give you a little sneak peek on what happened to our very own MasterChef Karen after the show. Chrissy Biastello strongly dislikes Asian food, for some reason. And well, she continues cooking and gives out private chef services along with posting recipes on her blog called Rotund Chef. And oh, by the way, Chrissy has also been banned from Twitter for posting more than a few racist comments. Somehow, I'm not surprised. But just like Chrissy, Natasha Cernyats, though a wonderful chef, managed to gain attention as one of those mean girls in season 4 of MasterChef. To begin with, Natasha, right from her audition round, came off as energetic, vivacious, and adaptable. However, her true colors of arrogance and rowdiness showed once she entered the kitchen.
Keep cooking, shut your mouth.
Now, let me give you a little brief breakdown of Natasha's personality throughout the season. Right from being disrespectful to her fellow contestants to being super competitive in all of her challenges, Natasha did manage to hurt a few other home cooks over the entire season.
Who do you want to send home?
Christy. What is going to get her out of this competition? What is going to be her failure point?
She then grew more arrogant and started behaving spitefully, ranting, and arbitrarily attacking her rivals. And guess what was the reason behind it all? She wanted to be the center of attention. So, when she didn't get it, she would act rudely and wasn't about to settle for anything less. See, Natasha was prone to underestimate her rivals, believing herself to be the best chef overall. She viewed her competitors with disdain more times than not, too.
In a competition to come, I'll be able to take her out.
The only saving grace was that Natasha was a fantastic and consistent cook with the maximum team and individual challenges won. However, like I said, Natasha was somewhat of a mean girl. For instance, in the elimination round, Joe appreciated Chrissy's mac and cheese dish, and this is when Natasha remarked,
I can make mac and cheese too.
But you have to give it to Chrissy here. She could literally sense Natasha's brewing hate towards her even though they didn't know each other at this point.
She hates you.
Oh, absolutely.
Why would she hate you?
I have no idea.
You don't even know each other.
Exactly.
Well, this was just a small incident within the confines of the kitchen. Wait till you see the petty things that she had to say on their first outdoor cooking challenge set up in an elementary school.
I was a tomboy. Bree would be like the quiet one. Eddie would be the athlete. Howard would probably be one of the cool guys. James would be kind of the oddball. And Christy would be the loudmouth.
The trail of snide and hurtful remarks don't end here. In episode 7 of the season, Natasha got into a full-blown argument with Beth. So what happened is, when Beth commented on Natasha's cauliflower puree, calling it disgusting, Natasha, being her petty self, lashed out at Beth like a hurricane. And you have to see it for yourselves.
That's why you will never be on my team ever. Stop. No. Seriously, you are doing nothing to help the problem.
Oh boy, Chrissy was no saint, but Natasha left no stone unturned either. This is just a brief overview of how bitter and salty Natasha was. She's honestly gonna need her own video to fully do her justice. Attitude aside, maybe it was her cutthroat nature which led her to the top 2. But hey, let's be real here, she might be a hell of a winner, but she wasn't winning any hearts. Alrighty, now next in line of evil chefs, we have our very own Christian Collins. Christian is yet another self-righteous, arrogant contestant who thought to no end of himself. However, like Natasha, he was an excellent chef. Despite the arrogance, Christian knew what he was doing in the kitchen, and so he managed to finish things off in 3rd place in season 2.
I think they kind of realized, like, oh, maybe we should have listened to Christian.
Nonetheless, here's a quick sneak peek into Christian Collins' personality. See, outside of the competition, he exuded confidence, humility, and energy. But within the confines of the competition, he turned out to be exceedingly competitive. So much so that it gave him a really nasty attitude. Over the course of the season, Christian became cockier and more arrogant, eventually becoming a selfish narcissist. He was horrible and contemptuous and extremely rude to boot. Notably, during the team challenges, he wasn't above throwing his teammates under the bus at the first sign of adversity.
I don't think my dish is the worst dish here. Esther's dish looked pretty.
And if that wasn't enough, this is him doing a Chef Ramsay impression.
If you win this challenge, you're going to have a huge advantage.
I don't know what the huge advantage is going to be, but whatever it is, I want it.
Oh, the nerve, I tell you. He really thought he could get away with doing anything. But guess what? To make things even worse, he also had a hot temper and was sensitive to the judges' criticism when his competitors stood out instead of him. He frequently refused to accept responsibility for his blunders, which he was severely rebuked for by the judges, particularly Chef Ramsay and Joe.
It was really something subpar. We were very disappointed.
I think you're wrong. I don't think my dish is the worst dish here.
With time, his ego grew, and eventually he began criticizing everyone around him. Nobody was safe from his onslaught. His constant negative energy and lack of empathy sent motions throughout the kitchen as everyone turned their backs on him. What's more, he also had fights with numerous people like Adrian, Max, Susie, and especially a longer feud with Jennifer.
I told Jennifer, I think she's a bitch, and she's gonna get what she deserves. Thinks that she can cook better than me.
I guess some people are just born to create chaos and negativity around themselves. And Christian Collins has got to be up there among the worst of them. So, right from throwing tantrums to being as non-cooperative as humanly possible, these were a few of my picks for the most evil contestants to have ever been on MasterChef. So, who would you add to this list? Let me know in the comments section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to visit my social media pages, drop a like, subscribe, and turn on my post notifications if you haven't already. Plus, if you thought this video was crazy, then wait till you see my next video right here, since it's even better.